because of this association that have been fighting for so long now. And the government didn't have any solutions. But now we are here to fight for the solutions that is going to be permanent and make us safe for all of us as Sowetan. And like each and every day, we will hear that there have been a gunshot, they were fighting. So, and when they are fighting, it affects the passengers as well. Even a passenger, even if we're in the taxi, 3 people or 4 people die, including the driver, or injured. So it's been happening, like we can't even, a year, it's more than 1,000.
The marathon world record holder Kenya's Kelvin Kiptum will be honoured at the London Marathon this weekend. The 24-year-old died alongside his coach, Rwanda's Gervais Hakizimana, in a car accident in western Kenya in February. Kiptum was set to compete in this year's London Marathon, where he was looking to win for the second year in a row. The event will begin with a tribute to Kiptum. Kiptum had set records in all the 3 marathons he ran in his short-lived career. And finally, several international news media, including Israeli newspaper The Jerusalem Post, are reporting that explosions were being heard in the central Iranian city of Isfahan in the south of the capital, Tehran. There are also reports that air traffic over Iran has been diverted. The Post further reports additional explosions in the Babil Governorate of Iraq and a region in southern Syria. Other outlets also confirm simultaneous explosion in all 3 countries. Our correspondent Sherwin Price-Peace in New York reports that these developments are emerging after Israel vowed to respond to Iran's retaliatory aerial strikes at the weekend, as the UN chief warned earlier that the Middle East was on the precipice.
The reports of these explosions come after Israel promised to respond to Iran's barrage of missiles and drones dispatched over the weekend in what Tehran called legitimate self-defense after a suspected Israeli strike on its Syrian consulate in Damascus killed several Iranian military leaders. Israel appeared reticent to international calls for restraint, promising a response in a time, place and manner of its choosing, while Iran's Foreign Minister Hossein Amir Abdollahian warned in the Security Council Thursday that his country would not hesitate to assert its inherent right to give a decisive response were Israel to use force and violate its sovereignty. Sherwin Price-Peace, SABC News, New York.
Recapping your top story, the Office of the Public Protector is today expected to furnish former Public Protector Advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane with record and reasons explaining why her 10 million rand gratuity was withheld. For SAFM News, I am Luyanda Maume. Headlines at 6:30.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM Sports Headlines, soccer, the Premier Soccer League has unveiled the Nedbank Cup semi-final, the dates as well as the venues. And in athletics, Glenrose Xaba clinches the first 5,000-meter gold at the National Championships. We'll bring you the details just before 6:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Very good morning. We start with a collision scene in the Free State. It's on the N3 driving to Durban between Harrismith and Swinburne. It is a fatal crash, so there will be an impact for some time. The Durban-bound side, just south of Harrismith, is closed, with motorists and truckers being diverted into a contraflow arrangement on the northbound side. So just watch for some slowing traffic. That's it. Reports of a pedestrian down coming to Pretoria this morning on Pretoria Street, just by CBC. That's Pretoria Street near Casonia Avenue. Is likely to be some delays. Apparently, traffic quite busy already in that area as well. Reports coming in of taxi blockades on the R102 at Gingingluvu, northern parts of KZN. Not sure what that's all about and how widespread it is, but just a heads up of some unrest in the Ging area this morning. And Cape Town, third day, I think, in a row with some fairly heavy mist across the greater Cape Town area. It's not everywhere, but where it is, visibility is quite significantly reduced. So if it's misty where you are, lights on, slow down, and drive safe, and give yourself some extra time to get through an inevitable backlog. I'm Rob Byrne. SAFM Sunrise starts now.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
Hey, it's Friday. Good morning. Welcome to SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. 7 minutes after 6 the time. Glad you're along with us heading into the weekend. And it's a sort of strange time in our elections. I've been thinking about this a little bit, and I sort of made the point a little while ago that we haven't yet seen the sort of 2 or 3 or 4 big issues that the election's going to be about. And I wondered if maybe it's because political parties are almost talking past each other, that maybe, and this worries me a little bit, that we're sort of, different people want so many different things that they aren't even even sort of arguing with each other anymore. They're just sort of looking at sort of different groups of people and talking to different groups of people. And that's why we sort of see some of the things that we see. And I've been thinking also a little bit, and I remember at the sort of start of the election campaign making this point, that I think one of the big questions of the election will be whether you as a voter decide to judge the governing party on the last 30 years or on the last 5 years. And obviously, you know, if you're the ANC, it's probably better to talk about the last 30 years than the last 5 years. But it's been very interesting to watch that. And yesterday, Parks Tau, he's the Deputy Minister of Cooperative Governance, he's in the National Cabinet, he's an NEC member of the ANC. He was booed, I understand, while on the stage at the University of Fort Hare. He was taking part, I think, in a Mail and Guardian political debate there. And when he said that, you know, South Africa's really improved over the last 30 years, he was booed. And look, obviously within a crowd of people, you don't know if people came from other parties or whatever. But I think it just gets us to a very interesting question around how people feel about, you know, what they're going to judge the election on. And the Electoral Commission chair, Mosotho Moepia, he took part in another debate in Joburg last night. And he was asked about the decision by the IEC to go to the Constitutional Court to appeal or seek clarity on the Electoral Court's ruling allowing former President Jacob Zuma to be a candidate for MK for Parliament. And he's very clear. He says this is not about Zuma, this is not about MK. He says it's really that they need the clarity. And then he goes on to say, and I thought this was interesting and I hadn't sort of realized this before, he said that we also need to avoid the risk of objections after the election. You can see how complicated things could be after the election. I thought that might be an interesting or an important point to hear. I know MK, I think, are planning a protest today. I think it's in Centurion, or they were planning a protest accusing the IEC of being biased against them. The IEC did, of course, argue with MK and against the ANC in the party registration case. The other issue that comes out of all of this, and I keep thinking about it, is that we still don't have the reasons from the Electoral Court as to their decision. And because so many people, including myself, were taken by surprise by the decision, those reasons really are important. So I think everyone's sort of waiting for the reasons. I hope there isn't some delay or something like that. We really need to kind of hear what's happening there and how this has happened. I think it's really important. There's been a bit of a discussion around this sort of warning from the British government to its citizens coming to South Africa, because it said that an attack, a terrorist attack on South Africa is very likely to occur. And they talk about ISIS and they talk about another group called Daesh. And they say that one of these groups is likely to carry out an action in SA. And the UK says that this warning goes back to January. Other people have said it's actually been there for the last 2 years or so. Zane Dungor is the Director General of the International Relations Department. He's asked for an explanation from the UK. The UK has not given any sort of explanation. We're still kind of operating in the dark a little bit here, but this is always the case with these things, and countries get very angry when, you know, someone issues a terror warning or someone issues an advisory to citizens to say don't go here or be safe there. People get very cross about it. So yeah, I have to say I find it, and we spoke about it when it happened, but I find these stories quite frustrating because they never go anywhere unless something happens, of course, and we all hope that it won't. The MEC of Transport in Gauteng, Kedibono Diala Tlabela, she's been talking and trying to sort of get some kind of peace between these two taxi associations, WATA and Nandue. And they have been really, I suppose, at war would be the right word, for a long time. And various people have been caught up in this. Some people have been killed as a result. She wants to stop them both operating. At the center of it was a decision by an official in her department, who's since been moved, to basically grant one of the taxi associations the right to use a route which was already being used by another taxi association. You don't have to be, you know, a rocket scientist to know that that was always going to cause trouble. And I remember the National Taxi Alliance saying, you know, the big warning sign here was that that decision was made on a weekend. Who assigned routes on a weekend? So no peace, she says, just impossible to get a truce between them. I mean, maybe it's time to just take them both off the road for a while. Might be the only way to do it, but I know that imposes suffering on the people of Soweto. Busisi Mkhwebane, the EFF MP, former public protector, she won a court case yesterday against the Public Protector's Office, and particularly Koleka Xeleka, who's the current public protector. And what happened was, Mkhwebane is demanding the 10 million rand gratuity. She says she's owed this for her time as public protector. As I understand the arguments from the current public protector, she says that, well, Mkhwebane did not finish her term, and as a result of that, she is not eligible for the gratuity. She was also removed, by the way, by Parliament before her term expired. And then she also has said, the current public protector has said, Mkhwebane sort of left the office in a very bad way because she'd wasted money on frivolous litigation. The judge, though, yesterday said that Koleka and the Public Protector's Office were solely responsible for the case not being ready to determine, and they hadn't submitted the documents they were supposed to actually give. And so that's quite serious when they're issuing a costs order against the Public Protector's Office and Koleka. So Busisiwe Mkhwebane clearly winning that one yesterday. There's a report from, it's the Labour Market Intelligence Report, and it looks at what's happening in different provinces. It says the Western Cape has actually seen more demand for growth, for jobs. So it's created more jobs. And it's now at a point where basically there are more jobs there than there were in 2019. So it's doing better than it was before the pandemic, and I'm sure this will feed into our political cycle in some way. And then there was a comment, I hadn't seen this, but Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, this is in Business Day, said in his presentation this week around the Home Affairs White Paper, he said that he wants all spaza shops to be registered and to pay tax. And I thought that was very interesting. All right, I don't know if it'll be possible to do that. By the way, after 8 o'clock, we're going to try and get as many of the political party leaders as we can in our studios during this election cycle. John Steenhuisen's agreed to come in from 8 to 8:30, so you'll hear him there, and we'll put some questions to him. The number 086 000 2032, SMS 41391, tweet us FM Radio, and at Stephen Grootes. Send your WhatsApp voice notes to 0614 104 107. Good morning at 6:15.
For 120 years, Rhodes University has shaped history. From Sir George Corey's pioneering 62 conversations capturing the early history of the Eastern Cape, to the first email to be sent in South Africa, and now leading the way in nanotechnology. Rhodes University is more than an educational institution. We are a legacy in motion. Be part of the evolving legacy. Rhodes University, where leaders learn.
Match day number 30 will deliver high emotions and tension. 14th and 15th placed VfL Wolfsburg and VfL Bochum must go beyond their limits in the final stretch. Who will climb the ladder to victory? This is the Bundesliga. Football as it's meant to be. Catch VfL Wolfsburg versus VfL Bochum this Saturday, 20 April at 3 p.m. live on SABC3. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. #We love it here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The Daily News Diary on SAFM.
Leander Mayome, good morning.
Stephen, are you good?
I'm well, thank you. Is this the last time you and I get to do this?
Yes, indeed
Oh,
it
Leander,
is.
there are going to be questions in Parliament. There's going to be
questions all over the place, right?
Well, let me just say that we've really enjoyed having you on SAFM Sunrise. I'm really sorry to hear that you're leaving us.
Likewise, Stephen, likewise.
And that we really wish you the best of luck and strength for the future.
Thank you so much,
we'll miss you, Leander.
I truly appreciate it, man. And I'm going to miss talking to South Africans. I know SAFM people are very passionate people. And it's going to be a hole in my heart. I promise you. But hey, what do we do? It's time. When it's time, it's time, right?
Yeah. Anyway, I was really sorry to hear that.
Thank you so much, Stephen. I appreciate the sentiment, man.
All right, what's coming up today?
Anyway, today the Portfolio Committee on Higher Education will receive a briefing from the National Student Financial Aid Scheme concerning the governance and administration issues there. You'd know that the minister actually dissolved the board of the NSFAS recently. So let's find out what is happening at NSFAS. And you know that with students beating the war drums in terms of the payment of those, their monthly stipends and not happening on time. So there's just so many issues that are happening at NSFAS. So let's find out what they'll be telling us in Parliament today.
It's so interesting, and it's having such a big impact on so many people.
Absolutely. And I just think it's one of those things that just need to be sorted out once and for all, because it affects the education. It just has a knock-on effect on the entire society, as it were, Stephen. So hopefully some resolution will be found there very soon.
Yeah.
And also, we talk about this in our news bulletin. You reflected on it quite succinctly, Stephen. The Office of the Public Protector today expected to be finishing the former Public Protector Advocate Mkhwebane with the records and reasons explaining why that gratuity is being withheld. And of course, this after the Gauteng High Court in Pretoria ordered the Office of the PP to do so yesterday. Now, the judge had a few very unkind words for the current Public Protector Advocate Koleka Gcalega, even going as far as accusing of her of perjury. And so,
yeah, she was very cross, eh?
She was very cross with her. So let's see what happens there, Stephen. Definitely one of the stories that I don't expect there will be no development in this. Still quite a road in that story. And the IEC in the Free State, Stephen, will be holding its provincial signing of the Code of Conduct ceremony by political parties and independent candidates that will be contesting the national and provincial elections for the 2024 elections. This will be happening today, of course. And the Senzo Mewa case continues with a cross-examination regarding the cell phone data from the two cell phones that were in possession of the accused number 2 and 5. Some revelations there, Stephen, of course, with the guy saying, despite the fact that the accused were denying that they knew each other, but according to the records, they've been communicating quite frequently.
It would seem so. So the argument's only going to be about this wasn't my phone. That's really what it's going to be.
There's that too, because we know with the, what is it? Is it Rika? Yeah.
Yes.
So Rika definitely does that. But of course, this is South Africa. You can pretty much get a SIM card that is...
No, really? No.
I'm told,
No, that
Stephen.
cannot be true. And Enrique, it's not a chance.
Somebody told me. I heard from someone. And also, Stephen, a very worrying story that I think all of us need to be concerned about. Johannesburg facing a massive water crisis as the infrastructure is close to collapse, we are told. Water utility Joburg Water says they don't have the funds that are needed to do the repairs. And it is now apparent that the problem is far greater than what has been communicated in the public domain. So we'll definitely be taking a deep dive on this one to just find out the facts, Stephen, and bring them to the public, as it were.
Leander Mayome, my friend,
Thank you,
we will miss you. Good
Absolutely.
luck.
Thank you, my brother.
Leander Mayome will be listening on the radio today for the last time, 20 minutes after 6.
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
Let's have a look at your weather around the country this morning. Tshwane fine 13 and 25. Johannesburg fine 9 and 23. Vereeniging fine 8 and 24. Bombela fine 13 and 28. Polokwane fine 12 and 29. Mahakeng morning fog patches otherwise fine 11 and 29. Vryburg morning fog patches otherwise fine 11 and 29. Mangaung morning fog patches otherwise fine 8 and 25. Kimberley fine 10 and 27. Uppington fine 14 and 30. Cape Town, morning and evening fog patches, otherwise partly cloudy, a light and variable wind, 14 and 25. George, morning and evening fog patches, otherwise partly cloudy, a light and variable wind, 14 and 27. Gqeberha, morning and evening fog patches, otherwise partly cloudy, a light and variable wind, 14 and 25. East London, morning and evening fog patches, otherwise partly cloudy, a moderate southwesterly wind, 18 and 24. eThekwini, fine, a moderate southwesterly wind at first, 20 and 30. Richards Bay, fine, a moderate southwesterly wind, 19 and 29, and Pietermaritzburg fine 13 and 31.
Getting more money into your pockets has never been this simple and exciting. With SABC's new Simple Watch and Win game show, you can get more Zaga in your pockets. Catch more Zaga every weekday on SABC 1 at 9 p.m. You could win your share of 50,000 Rand. All you have to do to win is give the correct answer for the day. Just dial star 120 star 33 to hash to register and play. The cost is R1.50 per minute. You could win big with more Zaga. Only on SABC 1.
The Tunisian red and yellow outfit want to smile out of the field of play to emphasize why they are also called the Smiling One. But Masandawana believe there's a humongous reason why they are Bafana Bastyle. This is the first leg of the Total Energies CAF Champions League semi-final. Experience the exhilaration of African football. ES Tunis FC tackles Mamelodi Sundowns FC. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC 3. This Saturday, 20 April at 8:30 p.m. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international news.
22 after 6, good morning. In Dubai, the world's busiest international airport is still battling to recover from the most intense rains in the United Arab Emirates in recorded history. There's been massive flooding in that country. Normally, as you know, it's a desert. Dubai is a major hub for many airlines. If you fly international from South Africa, if you're going to Europe or almost anywhere, maybe not Australia, you're probably going to go through Dubai. Potejo Motshepele is an aviation expert. Potejo, good morning.
Good morning to you, Stephen, and to your listeners.
Firstly, the situation in Dubai, completely unprecedented. I can't imagine when they built the airport there that anyone thought they'd have to prepare for flooding.
Yeah, it is really something that has happened for the first time. I think there hasn't been anything as big as it was in the past. We haven't really had anything like this, such a huge disruption that has really caused quite a lot of disruption across the world. As you are aware that Emirates is operating out of Dubai from almost everywhere in the world. They utilize Dubai as a connecting point for all their flights that are coming from, or whether it's Australia, whether it's from New Zealand, everywhere else in the world, they go through Dubai. So this has really caused quite a lot of disruption for Emirates as an airline, but not necessarily for any other airlines, but just for them.
How important is Dubai as a sort of international hub? I made the point that so many international flights go through there.
Yeah, look, it is really for Emirates, like I said, getting a slot in Dubai airport as a airline operator. It's a little bit difficult. So many airlines that are operating or wanting to operate in Dubai or from Dubai, they always allocated unfavorable slots. So many airlines don't really see any reason to operate from that hub. So it's mainly Emirates itself that operates from there. So, the other airlines that are operating in other areas would be in Doha and in Saudi Arabia and so on. So, yeah, it is a bit of a disruption, but not so much for many of other airlines that are operating in Middle East, like your Qatar. Qatar is open. There's less disruption from them, and only those that goes in Dubai. In America here, there's nothing much really. There's not a lot of airlines that are operating out of America to Dubai, except the Emirates.
All of this obviously does have knock-on effects, though, doesn't it? Because people are supposed to connect in one place, they go to another place, etc. When you have a big hub being affected like this, then the knock-on effects move on all over the place.
Yeah, certainly. There are passengers that are stranded, across the world. Manchester, Australians that are stranded in Manchester heading to Melbourne, and they haven't been able to be given a priority to get into another flight connecting to where they are heading to. However, Emirates has always been a sort of detaching itself from alliance. There's the Star Alliance, there's One World, the Sky Team. They have never wanted to be part of that group where you are able to give option to your customers. They always wanted to have their own alliance and have, just on their own. They will either come into a country and do a code sharing agreement that doesn't necessarily benefit much. So, this is where the alliance kind of a situation comes in handy, where you are able to then say, we can put you onto another airline carrier, which can take you to a destination where you needed to be, particularly around this time. So they have been very much conservative. I don't know whether it is because they are the biggest airline around the world, and I think their conservativeness has really proven that it's not effective around this time because they are not able to maneuver and send passengers to other carriers that can operate with them. So it doesn't really work that much for them, particularly around this time, because they don't even have any other base except Dubai. Yeah, so that's the biggest problem for them.
Patejo Majapele, thanks very much indeed, aviation expert. Really appreciate the time. 28 minutes after 6.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning.
Good morning.
All right, the Premier Soccer League, they're looking at the Nedbank semi-finals.
Yeah, it's dates with the destiny. The dates have been announced. It's the highly anticipated Nedbank Cup semi-finals. Mark your calendars for the 4th and the 5th of May. Now, we will see the start off with the finalists, Chippa United, and the defending champions, Orlando Pirates. That'll happen at Nelson Mandela Bay Stadium. That'll be Saturday's face-off. The following day, Stellenbosch FC and Mamelodi Sundowns will compete for the remaining spot in the finals at Dani Craven Stadium in the Western Cape. Both matches kicking off at 3 p.m. and you can catch this action-packed semi-final lineup on SABC Sport. Elsewhere, soccer action saw Liverpool eliminated from the Europa League despite Atalanta's 1-0 in Bergamo. With all the damage done in the first league at Anfield, Liverpool fell to a 3-1 aggregate score. In the meantime, West Ham are out of the Europa League after drawing 1-1 with Bundesliga champions Bayer Leverkusen at London Stadium. Here's Leverkusen's coach, Xabi Alonso.
And yeah, to be honest, the best thing in halftime was the result. We were not on our best. Happily, we had a reaction in the second half. We have changed a little bit few things. The intensity was better, and we have seen a better second half. And at the end, with the Jerry's goal, happy to go through. But in Europa, you always have to go through tough moments. And today, the first 45 were not easy.
In the other match saw Aston Villa reaching the Europa Conference League semi-finals with a dramatic shootout win at Lille, winning 4-3 on penalties after rescuing a 3-3 draw on aggregate. And Athletics Glenrose Daba delivering a thrilling performance at the SA Athletics Championships, grabbing her first 5,000-meter gold. And finally, motorsport. Formula One is back in China for the first time in 5 years with a packed program, including a Saturday sprint race. Max Verstappen is chasing a 4th victory in 5 races in 2024, but admitted the weekend's Chinese Grand Prix will be an unknown entity.
A lot of unknowns, of course, from the track. Not having raced with this new generation of cars, so I think FP1, of course, again, is going to be very important to get hopefully quickly in a good rhythm, and honestly just work from there. See what you get. I do think that the new sprint format is better. It gives you also more opportunity to still work on the car. It seems all a bit more logic, I would say, and I think that's what we needed.
More sport, top of the hour on Sunrise. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. Good morning. Good to have you along with us this morning. You're with SFM leading the conversation. We'll find out more about the culture of non-payment affecting all sorts of strange institutions this week. Just gone 6:30.
Thank you, Stephen. In your headlines, the Office of the Public Protector is today expected to finish the former Public Protector Advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane with record and reasons explaining why her 10 million rand gratuity was withheld. This after the Gauteng High Court in Pretoria ordered the Office of the Public Protector to do so yesterday. There's more than 30,000 teaching vacancies countrywide. This was revealed by Basic Education Minister Angie Motshekga in a written parliamentary reply to a question that was posed by DA MP Baxolile Nodata. And several international news media, including Israeli newspaper The Jerusalem Post, are reporting that explosions were being heard in the central Iranian city of Isfahan in the south of the capital Tehran. There are also reports that air traffic over Iran has been diverted. I'll have details on these and other stories at 7.
SAFM. Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
It's not about start across Gauteng this morning. This is very important. Don't forget, this weekend, the R21 will be closed. It's a major closure both ways, full closure between El Mapias Drive and Olifantsfontein Road. It'll be closed all day Saturday from 6 a.m. until 6 p.m. and then back on Sunday from 6 a.m. until 12 noon. So 12-hour closure Saturday through the day, Sunday morning closure. Of course, it's the key route that links the capital city, Pretoria, down for flight connections at the airport. And it will be heavy at times across the weekend on the R21 approaching the closures, and then all that traffic diverting through Clayville and a lot of it ending up in Irene, and there'll be some really significant congestion. So if you need flight connections, particularly on the southbound track from Pretoria across the weekend, make sure you've got plenty of time to get through that, or you're just choosing alternative routes. It'll keep you well away from that closure and backlog. Now, into Durban, there's roadworks sort of overrun this morning on the M4 at Congella, so quite a heavy backlog on the Southern Freeway. The traffic queuing almost back to the M7. Coming out of Chatsworth, the Higginson Highway, very heavy out towards the N2. And Cape Town, pockets of mist again this morning. It's not as widespread as it has been. There's some areas that are clear and bright. There's others that are really fog and mist bound. So drive carefully if it's misty where you are. And issues coming out of Mitchell's Plain, the M7 going north to the R300 and the R300 going west in towards the M7 Jake Scobell Junction. Both of those routes busier than you might be expecting. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
Intaleng Lachela, good morning. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday, Stephen. I hope you're well.
Asian markets, US markets, the JSE, how's it all looking?
Let's start off with a quick look at how markets fared yesterday. Now, over in Wall Street, markets ending mixed with most indexes in the red. The S&P 500 closing lower for a fifth day. Now, this is the longest losing streak since October last year and comes as investors digest comments from Fed officials and corporate earnings reports. In Asia, markets are in the red on the back of geopolitical uncertainty in the Middle East, as they've been reports of explosions being heard in Iran. Local markets, in the meantime, staging a rebound as the all share gained 0.4% at the close. The rand, however, shedding most of its gains, trading close to 19.30 against the dollar on the back of the volatility playing out right now.
And then TSMC, the microchip company, their profits topped analysts' expectations.
Earnings from that company have been shooting the lights out as it continues to ride the artificial intelligence wave. Now, TSMC is the world's largest chip maker and it supplies chips to major companies like Apple and Nvidia. In the first quarter, its net profit rose 9% as tech companies continue to invest in AI, further boosting the chip maker. The company has said it expects to continue to improve due to strong demand, but it warned of macroeconomic and geopolitical uncertainties, which could further weigh or affect consumer confidence and end market demand.
And then Netflix subscriber growth has topped the estimates.
Now, Stephen, yesterday we talked about Ster-Kenny Core and how online streaming is eating into the cinema market. Netflix's latest earnings really a testament to that. In the first quarter, the company added close to 9.5 million new subscribers, and this has resulted in a 14% jump in revenue and an 86% surge in earnings. What has assisted Netflix in delivering upbeat numbers is its ad-supported plans. So more consumers opted for the version of Netflix that has commercials because it costs less. That plan in particular accounts for 40% of new sign-ups in the markets where it's offered. Now, South Africa is lucky as Netflix isn't looking to roll out that option in the country anytime soon. But what it has started doing here, I think since about mid-2023, is cracking down on password sharing between households. This comes after it said that over 100 million households across its where it operates in, these households have been sharing these passwords, and now that it has that somewhat under control, it's focusing on expansion efforts, looking to expand its sports offering with a $5 billion deal to stream WWE's wrestling show Raw from next year.
Sharing is caring, Intaleng. Thank you, Intaleng Lachela. Back with us in an hour. More business news through the day here on SAFM.
Africa Update on SAFM Sunrise, a continental overview of current African affairs.
Russ Advocate Sipho Mantula, good morning.
Steve, over fresh morning and Jumbo Africa to the listeners.
In Kenya, their military chief died in a helicopter accident yesterday.
Stephen, this is very sad because President Ruto yesterday has already put a 3-day period of national mourning starting today in honor of the 11 victims. One of the victims is one of the head of the Kenyan Defense Force, General Francis Omondi Ogola, who yesterday, Stephen, their chopper helicopter came down in the Kenya's Rift Valley as they were coming from Elgeyo Marakwet, where they've been dealing with some of the cattle raiders. Now, yesterday they got accident, Stephen, and that's where they've lost 11 of their military servicemen. And General Agola joined the Kenyan Defense Force in 1984. He was trained as a fighter pilot from the US. And also, you'll recall, Stephen, 2022, President Ruto accused him that he was part of the people who wanted to overthrow his 2022 presidential election. But later he said he's a qualified man for the job. But now Kenya are mourning one of his son of the soil, General Francis Omondi Ogola.
And then Burkina Faso, their military government, they're expelling 3 French diplomats.
Stephen, they've already declared them persona non grata, and to leave the country in 48 hours. The Burkinabe Foreign Affairs say that they have been accused for what they call the subversive activities, Stephen, and others are saying that it appears the French diplomats have been having meetings with some of the civil society in Burkina Faso. We know, Stephen, how Burkina Faso has already moved away from France with the Traore since moving away from France in 2022. There have been these issues of Burkina Faso moving towards Russia in terms of how they are moving away from France but moving to Kremlin. Now Traore has already said these 3 diplomats must leave Burkina Faso by Saturday, tomorrow, Stephen. And these 3 diplomats, there were 2 political advisors there.
And then Tanzania's president, Samia Hassan Suluhu, she's in Turkey.
Stephen, Samia Suluhu Hassan is in Turkey. His visit started this week. It will be ending on the 21st of April. He's going to sign 8 cooperation agreements with his counterpart, Erdogan, one of the prime ministers in Turkey. What is important is that this is the first visit of Samia Suluhu since being a leader, and Turkey has been having bilaterals with Tanzania for 14 years. Now, they're going to be looking at many issues that will include global trade, regional issues, and also, Stephen, look at the scope of markets in the agricultural products between Tanzania and Turkey.
And then Italy's Prime Minister, she is in Africa at the moment and been talking about Russia's war in Ukraine.
That's quite true, Stephen. But there's this meeting of Italy of the G7 ministers of foreign affairs. It's all about the conflicts that are in Africa, the Middle East, but also they are going to be having a debate on the sanctions that have been imposed on Zimbabwe. The issue of lifting of sanctions on Zimbabwe, Cuba, is part of the meetings of the G7, but also the EU. They are part of this meeting, Stephen. They are in the Italian resort island of Capri, where they are going to engage also in the G7 partnership with the African Union. A very important move to understand how G7 foreign ministers perceive the role of the African Union in these global conflicts.
And then you're taking us back to this day, 19th of April, 1960.
It's 64 years ago, Stephen, in our neighborhood in Namibia, Windhoek, the then Southwest Africa. Today it was the formation of the Southwest African People's Organization, SWAPO, that was formed by Herman Dweyivo Yadweyivo. This is the party, Stephen, that fought for the independence and the liberation of Namibia from the then apartheid South Africa. They won their independence in 1989 and 1990, and Sam Shafushinai Mujoma became the first president of Namibia. Asante sana SG, as facilitated the conversation. SFM observing the Freedom Month.
Rights Advocate Sipho Mantula, thank you. Of course, back on Monday, more news from our continent through the day here on SFM.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Lala on the line from Polokwane on the issue of SIM cards. Lala, hi, good morning. You can get unrekeyed SIM cards anywhere, can't you?
Yes, good morning, Stephen. You'll remember very well that some years ago, I think about 5 years ago, the South African company called MTN in Nigeria was fined for over 2 billion rand.
Yes, I remember that very clearly, yes.
Yes, but you can't hear in South Africa, you find that Like here in Polokwane, you go to Church Street, you find a lot of young people standing there issuing SIM cards which are already been recut, free of charge, for any network.
Free?
They're already recut.
Why do they give them to you for free? What do they get out of it?
Because it's like these Nigerian guys, when they are leaking these SIM cards, there is some percentage of money that they get from these networks. Some of us who went to an extent of trying to report this to the police. The police will tell you that this is not our issue. It's the issue of the network providers. The network providers, when you go to them, they will tell you that this is an ICASA problem. When you go to ICASA, they say police. So we have this problem. That's why most of us, every day you get a lot of calls from these people that you don't even know. They are trying to offer you this, they are trying to offer you a job, but you don't even know them. You can't even chase them because these SIM cards are not the valid SIM cards. They are just being recut on other people's names. And I don't know what can be done on that.
Lala, we did a mediated conversation on this issue about 8 months ago, a long time ago now. And I remember thinking at the time afterwards, sometimes you come across a problem where you just can't see what the solution is. And I think this is one of those problems. Because if you had to just go and cut off unrecut SIM cards, right, which maybe you could do, you would have millions of people who can't communicate anymore. I mean, it would be a crisis.
Yes, but what is the Parliament do? Because we have the committee in Parliament that is dealing with these communication issues. It needs to address this thing together with the committee that is dealing with crimes. Because the people who are using this unauthorized SIM card are the ones who are committing crimes.
Yeah.
Because even if they want to threaten me, they can call me with a SIM card that is not on their names, and they will just receive it from the street. They use it one day and they throw it away. No one will be able to trace who called.
Yeah. No, Blala on the line from Polokwane. It's an important point. Thank you. Something we need to look at again, actually, the whole unregistered SIM cards issue, which is, I think, millions and millions of SIM cards. Bramoro and Mangung. Bramoro, hi. Police brutality.
Yeah, good morning, sir. How are you?
Yeah, well, go for it.
Thank you. Police in Sunnyside are terrorizing migrants in Sunnyside, Pretoria.
Yeah.
What the law entitles them to do is to check for proper documentation of every migrant. We agree. But what these police are rather doing is they confiscate your permit or your passport or your asylum, or even if you're a foreigner, you have ID. Then they tell you that they are taking it to the police station to verify it, which is totally wrong. You can wait for even a month. They will never return that document that they took from you.
And now you're in real trouble, aren't you?
That is it. So imagine this police took it and another police comes to you and asks you for your papers. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
Worst part, if you pay them, they wouldn't even bother to take the document from you. Meaning it's all resort to bribe.
Yeah.
This is something that is terrorizing the communities in Sunnyside, which the SAPS leadership needs to look into it. Even the commander there is aware of the situation, but you don't know what they are doing. Former First Minister, through his knowledge, has introduced a different system whereby you can just call a toll-free number to verify the status of every foreigner you come across. You just call that operational office, give them the passport number or the ID number. They will verify it to you and tell you, yes, the ID or the passport is genuine. Sure. The person is legal in the country.
All
but the SAPS are not making use of this knowledge. Please look into that for us also.
All right, Bramoro, thank you. And we've heard about that before. I think the phrase was that illegal immigrants are ATMs was the phrase that police used at one point. Samanga in the line from Cape Town. Samanga, just switch me off, please. I can hear that you've got your radio on in the background. All right, let's try again. Samanga, hi. All right, Samanga, we're going to come back to you in a moment. Just switch your radio off in the background, please. 14 minutes to 7.
And we will buy 500 cars and we will buy 500 more. Just to be the one who buys your car, will come to you and offer more. We buy cars, we buy cars. We buy cars, we buy cars.
We buy cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
Royal AM ladies and Lindelani ladies want to showcase who are the real queens of KZN. They both want out of the bottom half. This is the Hollywood Best Super League. Experience the KZN Derby, Royal AM Ladies FC versus Lindelani Ladies FC on Sunday 21 April at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC 1 and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag we love it here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
SAFM values your views. Be an active citizen.
13 minutes to 7, you know the number 086 000 2032. Ivor's on the line from Margate. Ivor, hi. You're a business owner in Margate, and you've really had a rough week after that heavy rain, hey?
Yes, we have, sir.
How's it been afterwards? How bad was the damage for you?
Well, sir, I've lost everything in my business.
Sure.
I've lost 4 customers' vehicles in the river. I've lost 3 personal vehicles and a trailer in the river. I've had customers' vehicles inside the workshop that are flooded, underwater, non-retrievable. Insurance, you're trying to claim insurance on the owner's side. Only 2 vehicles were insured on my properties.
Aye. And so, Ivor, you run a mechanic shop, eh?
Yes, I do.
I can't imagine, I mean, you know, when you closed up on Friday or Saturday last weekend and then, you know, the rain started pouring on Sunday, I mean, you would never have thought that something like this would happen.
No, I never ever thought that.
Sure. And your customers who lost the cars, I mean, they must be very, very frustrated.
I've spoken to most of them, and some of them have been around and had a look at their vehicles. They're saying it's an act of God. I had no control over this.
Yeah. Well, I think it plainly must be. How long have you been operating there, Ivor?
In those premises, I've been there for 3.5 years.
Okay. What are you going to do now? I mean, you say, you know, you only 2 of your vehicles were insured. Is the insurance company giving you any hassle over it?
No, none of my vehicles were insured.
Oh,
none of my personal vehicles. No, only 2 customers were insured.
Sure, Ivor. Do you think you're going to be able to operate again? I mean, you know, the property. Do you own it or do you rent it?
No, we rent.
Okay. I mean, it's going to be. Do you think you're ever going to be? I mean, what kind of help do you think that you might need to get up and running? And obviously, I mean, money's always the one thing. The other thing would be, you know, just having your customers coming back to you.
Well, I need tools. I need all that sort of thing to get back up on my feet. I've had a little bit of assistance from a few of my regular customers that have come forward and helped me to keep my boys employed, which has been very nice. And some of them have come and helped me try and clean up. It's been amazing with a few of my customers and friends. I had a surprise last night. Frank rock up from Joburg.
All right. Oh, Ivor.
Get up to last night. Come help you.
Sure. Ivor, such a tough time for you, and I can hear in a way I think you know, you might just feel that sort of things have just sort of come to an end, you know. I mean, it's such a devastating loss.
Yeah, we've lost a lot. It's very hard.
Were you employing people? I mean, are you worried for them as well, for your family?
It's myself, my fiance, and I had 2 employees. When I got the phone call, it was 8:30 Sunday night about vehicles going down the river. I went to my workshop, couldn't do anything, came back home, and we went back at midnight. And I was there until 4 o'clock Monday afternoon, trying to salvage what we could. We've been there every day trying to salvage. You know, we've had to go and find other premises where we can put our stuff. It's hard. It's very hard.
Sure, Ivor. I'm really sorry, man. Can we hang on to your number? I mean, I can't make any promises, you know that. If someone phones in, can we give them your number?
Yes, you may. I've got no problem with that.
All right, Ivor, we'll be thinking of you today. A business owner, a mechanic in Margate. Ivor Shed is his surname. And just as you can hear, the devastation, I think you can hear it in his voice actually, the devastation almost from that flooding in Margate this week. It's 8 minutes to 7.
SAFM. guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
There's a broken down vehicle on Joburg's N3 running north just up by Modderfontein Road. So quite a backlog coming through from Galulis again this morning. And the vehicle's just collided after Malabongwe on the M1 North. So expect some delays moving through Randburg on your way through towards the Fourways area. Top end of Soweto looks all right. No challenges there this morning. Soweto Highway, N17, New Canada Road at this stage appear to be open and flowing normally. Coming out of Pretoria, it's not a bad run unless you're the Montana side. There's a crash just after Sefako Makato. So traffic coming through that Montana exit towards Storenville Road being backed up. Protesting in the Eastern Cape, blocking the N2 again today between Umtata and Dutwa. Expect some delays and a bit of waiting around there this morning. Driving into Durban, the M4 roadworks at Congela overrunning and having an impact this morning. So a really big delay from Clarewood as you line up through the sort of Umbilo Congela area in towards central Durban. No lights on the Higginson Highway at Mobeni Heights. So coming out of Chatsworth, there's a big delay moving through there. Some reports coming through of protesting taxi-related around Ging and Gluvu. So possible delays along the R102 and maybe the N2. Just keep eyes open in that Ging region this morning. Cape Town misty in some parts, but clear in others. If it's misty where you are, please drive carefully. The highway's reasonably busy for a Friday morning. The N1 from Belleville, the N2 from the airport backs up through towards the Hospital Bend area, and plenty of traffic on the M5 already between Ottery and Buckley Road in the Maitland area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Join Smile Foundation for a movie night under the stars featuring Sing 2 on Saturday, 20th of April at Old Ed Sports Grounds. To book, visit smilefoundationsa.org. This is an SABC supported initiative.
USM Alger and RSB Pekane will demonstrate what a North African derby looks like. Who are the real heroes of the North between the Algerians and the Moroccans? This is the first leg of the Total Energies CAF Confederation Cup semi-final. USM Alger versus RSB Pekane. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. This Sunday, 21 April at 9 p.m. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
At SFM Radio and at Stephen Grootes on Twitter.
Well, I think the situation in Margate can be on many of our minds and thoughts this week, and people there really devastated by what's happened. And we've just got to prepare, I'm afraid, for more situations like that. So much rain falling there on Sunday night. There was an interesting story in Tshwane this week. The city's been going on one of these regular campaigns that you see so many people doing, where they go around cutting off customers who haven't been paying their bills. You know how often it happens around the country. In Tshwane, this was happening this week. We did this. We spoke to the city of Joburg this time last week about exactly this. But one of the offices Tshwane cut off this week was the office for SARS, because SARS owed the council over 800,000 rand. Tshwane says SARS has now paid the money and the power has been restored, but you know, SARS manages our tax. Anya Smith is a senior researcher in the economics department at Stellenbosch University and a senior economist at DNA Economics. Anya, good morning.
Yes, good morning, Stephen.
You see this almost as symbolic of one of the bigger problems we seem to be having in our society, where people aren't paying their bills. They aren't paying for services. And I mean, I'm kind of quite amazed that it's SARS that didn't pay here.
Yes, and I think there are obviously big questions about the competency of the people who are responsible for paying the bills and the internal systems in SARS that actually led to this situation in the first place. But I think non-payment for government services is quite a common problem in our country, and then secondly, I think in general, South Africans struggle in managing finances.
There are other things around all of this, and I mean, some of this is a deep history, but so many people refuse to pay their bills, and you actually see it across society. So it's not just people who can't afford to pay. There are plenty of people who can afford to pay who don't pay.
Yes, and I think government services in particular sort of is a very sort of unique type of good. I think people may have very different sort of emotional connections and understandings of government services and what they are entitled to receive or not receive.
Mm. Government has said people must pay. And I remember a couple of years ago, the ANC said at the beginning of the year, they said they'll go on a big campaign to get people to pay, to encourage people to pay. I think David Mabuza was deputy president at the time. He was talking about it. Has that had any impact? Because it seems, that the situation is actually getting worse.
Yeah, so I think a campaign itself is likely to have or very limited impact. So I think moral suasion or persuasion isn't a very strong instrument. Like, in order for that to have impact, people need to have an incredibly sort of strong value system backing their decision to pay. And I actually think that establishing quite a credible threat in the way that some municipalities have done by cutting people off from power is potentially a far stronger type of behavioral incentive.
So one of the issues here for councils, and if you look at revenue collection rates in councils, which would be one of the sort of metrics you'd look at to see how they're doing, and it's actually quite difficult for a council to switch people off. There's case law on it. With water in particular, you're supposed to, and it's a very impressive policy, but it's hard to implement in practice. You're not supposed to switch someone off completely. You're supposed to leave them enough water because water is seen as a human right. Does that make it?
Yes.
Does that make it difficult for councils? If councils could just go and switch you off and say, you haven't paid for 2 months, here's the big device that we have to switch it off, and you can't get around that, and we've switched you off, that would change things, wouldn't it? And that's not the situation that councils have.
No. I think that would help to create a totally different environment around the payment for government services. And I think in the case where municipalities in the past have switched off users, they've obviously managed a bit of a process in order to enable them to get to that point of switching off. And I think it's important for people to realize how costly that process is, sort of the transaction costs it generates. But we live in a country where, rightly so, there is a lot of respect for human rights, and due process has to be followed.
It would help if government departments paid their bills on time too, not just SARS, but all of them. So often it's government departments that haven't paid too.
Yes, and I think that's where I have big questions about societal accountability and government's ability to keep people accountable if different levels of government are not even accountable to itself. So I actually think that we're moving into a very sort of exciting pre-election phase to be having conversations about accountability and how one establishes that and how much we can expect from our leaders.
Anya Smith, thank you. A senior researcher at the University of Stellenbosch, also an economist, a senior economist at DNA Economics. In a few moments, we'll talk about, could this election end the era of transactional politics? Dr. Mampela Rampele will be with you. We'll also hear from the Electoral Commission in the Northern Cape. And then the idea of thresholds for representation in councils. How do we reduce the influence of sort of kingmaker parties? All of that's next. You're with SFM leading the conversation at 7 o'clock.
Thank you, Stephen. In your top stories, Public Protector ordered to furnish Mkhwebane with crucial information, and more than 30,000 teaching vacancies remain unfilled. This is SAFM News. A very good morning. I am Luyanda Maume. The Office of the Public Protector is today expected to furnish former Public Protector Advocate Bosisiwe Mkhwebane with record and reasons explaining why her 10 million rand gratuity was withheld. This after the Gauteng High Court in Pretoria ordered the Office of the Public Protector to do so yesterday. Mkhwebane launched an urgent review over the non-payment of the gratuity after the PP's office in February allegedly informed her that she would not be receiving it due to her impeachment in September last year. The legal counsel on behalf of the office had argued that papers filed by the applicant did not compel the respondents to relinquish the records. The Chapter 9 institution, which is the first respondent in the matter, has been ordered to pay the cost. Judge Colleen Collis.
In the present matter, these steps had not been followed as the record and the reasons for the decision had not been furnished. The failure to have furnished the record has the unintended consequence that the application to date is not ripe for hearing, as all the necessary affidavits that ought to have been filed is not before the court to date.
The Alice Magistrates Court sitting in Dimbaza is expected to hand down a judgment in the bail application of former bodyguard to the slain rapper Kenan aka Forbes, Anwar Khan and co-accused Terence Ubed. The duo is amongst the 16 accused persons charged for fraud and corruption amounting to 170 million rand at the Fort Hare University. A new suspect, businessman Justin Peter King, has been granted 50,000 rand bail along with 12 other suspects in the fraud and corruption case. King is alleged to have used his cash loan business to provide cash payment gratifications to university staff. Provincial NPA spokesperson Lukolo Jali.
Businessman Justin Peter King was added today as the 21st accused and was granted 50,000 rand bail that was not opposed by the state. He is expected to appear alongside the other co-accused on the 9th of May. In the meantime, the bail application of 2 of the 16 accused that were arrested earlier this month, Terence Ubed and Anwar Khan, has been postponed to Friday for judgment.
There is more than 30,000 teaching vacancies countrywide. This was revealed by Basic Education Minister Angie Motshekga in a written parliamentary reply. The question was posed by the DAMP Baxolile Nodada. Top 3 provinces with the massive vacant positions are KwaZulu-Natal, the Eastern Cape and Limpopo. The minister says filling of vacant posts at schools is an ongoing process to ensure that there is no class without a teacher for all grades. Lula Mamaja reports.
The reply indicates that KwaZulu-Natal tops the list with more than 7,000 vacancies. The Eastern Cape has more than 6,000, followed by Limpopo with nearly 5,000 vacancies. The Western Cape is the 4th province with highest vacancy rate. The reply indicates tops the list with more than 7,000 vacancies. The Eastern Cape has more than 6,000, followed by Limpopo with nearly 5,000 vacancies. The Western Cape is the 4th province with highest vacancy rate of more than 4,000, followed by Gauteng with nearly 4,000 vacancies. Lula Mamaja, SABC News, Parliament.
In our election-related news now, political parties contesting the upcoming elections in the Western Cape have signed the Electoral Code of Conduct during an IEC event in Athlone. This forms part of the IEC's mandate as the electoral management body to ensure an election that is free and fair. About 40 political contestants, including one independent candidate, have pledged their commitment to upholding the Electoral Code of Conduct. Provincial Electoral Officer Michael Hendrickse says this is about setting standards of behavior.
I think at the end of the day, this is a contest, and it's important that everybody plays according to the rules. One of the rules says that you have to respect the opinions of somebody else, that you cannot have any no-go areas. You can't have a situation where one party says, no, I will not allow posters of another party in my area. We should get out of that sort of sense of this is my area and your area, etc. So I think it's critical.
And finally, several international news media outlets, including Israeli newspaper The Jerusalem Post, are reporting that explosions were being heard in the central Iranian city of Isfahan, in the south of the capital Tehran. There are also reports that air traffic over Iran has been diverted. The Post further reports of additional explosions in the Babil Governorate of Iraq and region of southern Syria. Other outlets also confirm simultaneous explosion in all 3 countries. Correspondent Sherwin Paris Peace in New York reports that these developments are emerging after Israel vowed to respond to Iran's retaliatory aerial strikes at the weekend, as the UN chief warned earlier that the Middle East was on the precipice.
The reports of these explosions come after Israel promised to respond to Iran's barrage of missiles and drones dispatched over the weekend in what Tehran called legitimate self-defense after a suspected Israeli strike on its Syrian consulate in Damascus killed several Iranian military leaders. Israel appeared reticent to international calls for restraint, promising a response in a time, place and manner of its choosing, while Iran's Foreign Minister Hossein Amir-Abdollahian warned in the Security Council Thursday that his country would not hesitate to assert its inherent right to give a decisive response were Israel to use force and violate its sovereignty. Shervin Brycebees, SABC News, New York.
Recapping your top story, the Office of the Public Protector today expected to furnish former Public Protector Advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane with the record and reasons explaining why her gratuity was withheld. For SAFM News, I am Luyanda Maume. Headlines at 7:30.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM sports headlines, soccer, Mamelodi Sundowns craft a master plan to take down Esperance Tunis in the CAF Champions League semi-final tomorrow. And in tennis, Emma Raducanu serves up a storm, securing a spot in the Stuttgart Open quarterfinals. Stay tuned for the scoop just before 7:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
It was a good run earlier coming out of Pretoria, but that's all changed now with two collision scenes. The first as you come through the Montana exit, so just south of Sefaka-Makato, there is a crash between Sefaka-Makato and Stormful Road. That's reasonably heavy. It's got traffic also backed up leaving Montana towards the highway, and then another crash blocking a couple of lanes just before John Foster Drive, and that traffic very quickly parking back in towards Buata Avenue. Collision on the M1 North at Malabongwe Drive, so delays out of Randburg as you get up towards Four Ways, and a crash causing delays again on the N3 North going up to Modderfontein Road, so it's very heavy from Germiston through Galilees. Behind that, the N12 and R24 routes are backed up into the Galilees interchange for connections into that busy M3. Durban, the roadwork overrun on the M4 Southern Freeway, really having an impact this morning. The roadworks up around Umbilo and Kongela area. One lane open, a major backlog right through to sort of Jacobs, Clarewood area. It's very heavy. You might want to avoid the M4 inbound. Lights are out at Higginson Highway at Mobeni, so big delays coming out of Chatsworth this morning. Protesting between Umtata and Aidutwa, again blocking a section of the N2. About halfway between those two towns is where you'll be sitting around for a while. And Cape Town mist continues. I think it's about the third day of heavy mist. It's not everywhere, but in places the mist is heavy and it will have an impact reducing visibility. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
9 after 7, good morning. You're with SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. In a moment, Dr. Mampela Rampele on could this election be the end of transactional politics? We'll talk also about what's happening in the Northern Cape with the elections there and hear from the Electoral Commission. They had their big signing ceremony yesterday. And also we'll talk a little bit about thresholds and whether or not that's a good idea in councils to restrict the number of one-seat parties. I keep making this example in Joburg. There are 7 parties with 1 councillor. From 8:30, don't forget your story of the week. You might want to book your spot now on 086 000 2032. Very important if you do want to book your spot in advance. And then from 8 o'clock, don't forget the first in our series of interviews with political leaders during the elections in our studio. John Steenhuisen, the leader of the DA. He'll be with us from 8 o'clock, 10 after 7.
Molweni babukeli be-Kids Newsroom, igama lam ngumhlonto buhle Kelepa, izwakazi yasemampondomiseni, and we cannot wait to see you on SABC2 right here where you belong every single Monday at 4:30. See you there.
Match day number 30 will deliver high emotions and tension. 14th and 15th placed VfL Wolfsburg and VfL Bochum must go beyond their limits in the final stretch. Who will climb the ladder to victory? This is the Bundesliga. Football as it's meant to be. Catch VfL Wolfsburg versus VfL Bochum this Saturday, 20 April at 3 p.m. Live on SABC3. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
SAFM. Prime time all day long.
11 after 7, good morning. There's been a suggestion that this week that these elections that we're all looking forward to are a chance to go beyond what is called transactional politics. In other words, to move away from kind of the current model and move into something else. You know, at the moment, I've always said this, that politicians often win votes by dividing us. They appeal to one group or another at the expense of other people. And the suggestion this week comes from Dr. Mamphela Ramphele. She is the chair of the Archbishop Tutu Intellectual Property Trust and also chair of the Global Compassion Coalition. Dr. Ramphele, good morning. Thank you for your time on SAFM Sunrise this morning.
Good morning, Stephen, and good morning to your listeners.
You say we can go beyond transactional politics. What do you mean by that? What could we change?
What I mean is that politics is meant to be the ordering of relationships between citizens, and we entrust the running of that system of governance to people elected to serve the public. But if you look at what has happened over the last 30 years, things which should be done by government officials who are highly paid compared to other officials in the world are tendered. We tender for the most basic services that should be provided by government. And the process of tendering, as we have seen from the Zondo Commission, is a big racket that has been framed as state capture, because public officials and the politicians are using their influence to get personal benefits out of using state funds that should be providing for basic essential services to every citizen for their own enrichment. That's what I mean by transactional politics, instead of politics of service in terms of the requirements of our Constitution, which is very clear about the entitlements of citizens to basic services, such as water, housing, education, and health.
So how do we change that? I mean, how would the result of an election change that?
Very fundamental, because we, the citizens, have the power to elect only those leaders that can be entrusted with the sacred duty of running our government and the institutions of state at the national, the provincial, and the local level, so that we can end this chaos that have collapsed. The provincial governments from my province of Limpopo have collapsed, and people go without water, without electricity, without cleanliness, without the very basics of life. That is the result of elites bargaining between themselves to enrich themselves at the expense of the money, or using the money that should be going to provide basic services. So we can elect leaders, and there are people who have put their hands up. Some of them are young, very experienced professionals, business people, who realize that to leave government to the so-called politicians is actually to undermine the future of our great-grandchildren.
So for that to happen, and you talk about elites, and I know in your piece you talk about urban elites in particular, and unfortunately what we've seen instead is that people who can vote choose not to. The people who lose out in these systems choose not to vote. Doesn't that actually make it, unless they vote, doesn't that mean that the politics we have at the moment, we're just going to repeat it?
No, Stephen, people don't choose not to vote. What we have to understand is that young people have been betrayed. Any self-respecting democracy should be teaching civic education from primary school all the way to university. We have not done that as a so-called constitutional democracy. And that's not from lack of advice. Kara Asmal tried to introduce civic education in 2002. It was rejected by then President Thabo. So we mustn't say that the problem is with young people. We have not enabled young people to understand what does it mean to be a citizen of a constitutional democracy, what powers, what responsibilities, what rights you have. And so we have to go back. My generation that fought for freedom has a responsibility to continue the conversations with our sons and daughters to help them to understand it. People like Lindiwe Mazibuko are doing this. And so too, a lot of initiatives from civil society are doing this. We have life orientation in our school curriculum. Why is that life orientation not being used by both the IEC and the government in general to introduce civic education? Why? My view is that the government we have is a government that treats citizens as mushrooms. The less light on the mushrooms, the bigger the mushroom. And so it's deliberate denial of civic knowledge for the majority of people, and that is what is perpetuating the non-voting and the voting of people without holding them accountable.
Dr. Mampela Rampele, thank you. Chair of the Archbishop Tutu Intellectual Property Trust and Chair of the Global Compassion Coalition.
Stephen Grootes on SAFM.
Well, 30 political parties have now signed the Electoral Commission Code of Conduct in the Northern Cape. 24 parties are contesting provincially in that province. As you know, the Northern Cape does have our smallest population, but it's our biggest province, so it creates all sorts of problems for the IEC. The head of elections for the Electoral Commission in the Northern Cape is Bonolo Modise. Mr. Modise, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen, and good morning to your listeners.
So you had the ceremony yesterday where parties signed this pledge. Do you think they're going to live up to the promise of the pledge they've signed?
Well, it is our hope that parties that committed themselves to adhering to the code will do as they publicly displayed yesterday, Stephen.
You've been planning for these elections. You've got huge distances to cover in the Northern Cape. Sometimes the roads aren't great. How difficult is that for you?
Well, we've gotten used to how we manage elections in the province, Stephen. So distances are no longer an issue for us.
And we have 3 ballots in this election and can sometimes look a little confusing. Do you think people are going to understand how this works? And I'm talking about voters everywhere. I mean, this is going to be, I worry that this could be one of the big issues on voting day, the idea of 3 ballots, which we've never had before.
Well, Stephen, we as the Commission are going all out to try and make sure that voters understand the implications of these elections. You know that in the past national and provincial election, we only had 2 ballot papers, and in this election we've got 3. Now we are sending out our municipal outreach officers to different locations and villages to ensure that we share this information with voters. It is critical for us that we don't have a lot of spoiled ballots because people do not understand what's going on, Stephen. So it is a campaign that we are busy with, both physically with voters and also on media.
And in the Northern Cape, do you think the elections are sort of, do you have particular issues there that we don't have in other provinces? Are there particular things that you find you have to deal with in the Northern Cape?
Not really, Stephen. We are just a small part of the whole country. So what other provinces experience, we also experience. People have issues with different day-to-day issues. We also find the same difficulties in our province, Stephen.
Bonolo Modise, thanks very much indeed. Head of elections in the Northern Cape for the IEC.
DA leader John Steenhuisen. What qualifies the DA to run the country?
Firstly, we do not tolerate corruption. And where the DA governs, life is better. And that is why millions of South Africans are moving to DA governments. We still have much more to do. But in the past year, the Western Cape created over 300,000 new jobs and is working every day to become load-shedding free. We can bring this DA difference to the rest of South Africa, but only if you vote for the DA.
This political party advertisement was paid for by the political party concerned. The views expressed in this advertisement are those of the political party and not those of the SABC.
USM Alger and RSB Pekane will demonstrate what a North African derby looks like. Who are the real heroes of the North between the Algerians and the Moroccans? This is the first leg of the Total Energies CAF Confederation Cup semi-final. USM Alger versus RSB Pekane. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. This Sunday, 21 April at 9 p.m. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. #We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
21 after 7, good morning. The DA's chief whip in the National Assembly, Sivuya Gachube, has now tabled a private member's bill that proposes big changes in local government. It would mean after an election in a council, there would be a full month for people to form a new administration instead of, I think it's 2 weeks at the moment. It would also mean political parties would have to pass a threshold to get seats in the council. Instead of having just enough votes to get a councillor, you would have to pass a particular threshold. And there's been huge conversations around this. The idea is it would stop parties being able to have a huge impact in a council with just one seat. So, for example, in Joburg at the moment, there's 7 parties with just one councillor. The mayor comes from a party with just 3 councillors. So the idea is, how do you do that? And you can imagine all of the arguments about it. Omhle Nshingila is a political analyst based at Wits University. Omhle, good morning.
Good morning. How are you, Steve?
I'm well, thank you. Thank you for joining us. The idea of setting a threshold, I mean, it can be quite controversial. The argument for it is it would introduce more stability, stop what are called kingmaker parties. The argument against it is that it would probably not be entirely democratic, or it would reduce democracy. Do you think it's a good idea?
So, from our perspective, when we look at how just the House of Parliament works, is that it would totally become an admin nightmare at the moment, just given how short of a time frame the bill has been proposed for and how it should work within the next coming few months. And because of how South Africa's laws are so strong and the judiciary is very thorough when it goes through bills and what sort of bills are also tabled and put through into Parliament, it would take quite a long time to pass such legislation.
Okay, so you think it's not going to happen. But is this an idea we need to, a conversation we need to have? The idea around a threshold. In other words, a political party can only get have an MP or a council if they get above 1% or 5%, rather than just, do you get enough votes for an MP or a single councillor?
The tricky part about things that have to do with legislation is that Parliament will always vote for what is politically correct for the ruling party at that time, whoever the ruling party is. And if that works in the political favor of those who are in power, of course the bill might be passed. But if not, and if this might cause a threat to democracy and a threat to fair elections, even within Parliament itself, the threshold part does not really matter. It just matters who at the moment is holding that political seat for it to be passed.
Are there other ways to stop the sort of coalition chaos that we've seen? I mean, in Ekurhuleni, there was no mayor for a month. Interestingly, the province of Gauteng, I think, had a duty to intervene and didn't. I'd need to check the law on that, but I think that they didn't do anything. There have been other situations where that's happened. But what people are really worried about is that what we've seen in local government, we're going to see in national government or in provincial government after the election. Are there measures we can take to stop that from happening?
I do believe that because the political context has changed now, and we're going into a landmark elections with more political parties taking part in the elections and more candidates actually being voted in. We have 800 seats, but 14,000 people running for these seats. I think there really needs to be change in how there really needs to be legislation in how political parties are governed and how they are also controlled in order for them not to abuse their political powers when they get into certain political offices and positions. Why this is important is because there must be something that regulates the behavior of politicians further in our country, for there to be consequences when there's delays because of political or infighting within those particular legislative bodies. So there must be something that really regulates coalitions, and there must be something that also regulates the sort of political atmosphere that we're also going into. In a democracy, we are supposed to evolve. And I do believe that the judiciary is also being a little bit slow with evolving in how they govern political parties.
I think before the elections, we're seeing arguments about what could happen, and kind of what we need are rules of the game, if I can call it that. So rules of the game we all agree to. And what we're looking at is changing the rules of the game. But the problem is that, the political parties won't agree to the rules of the game. So sometimes we're playing football and sometimes we're playing rugby.
I think this is why I keep emphasizing that the rules of the game must become law. And when the rules of the game are just informal and loose and ad hoc, it becomes problematic for them to be held accountable. But if the rules of the game are made law, it becomes more difficult to evade those rules.
Thank you very much indeed. Omplain Shingil is a political analyst at Wits University, 27 after 7.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. Sundowns preparing for battle.
Yes, to give Esperance a taste of the Mzansi magic as well on the field. The countdown, it's the clash of titans. That's what it's been dubbed. Sundowns setting their sights on suffocating Esperance in the CAF Champions League semi-final. The team well drilled, well primed for battle. And there's the Sundowns utility player, Tapelo Morena, saying Sundowns have been in Tunisia since Wednesday and they have ticked the right boxes in their preparation.
I think the region is very important for us, especially after the trip, the long flight, and to bring back the legs. And obviously arriving on Wednesday and couldn't do a lot, but the most important thing we had to sit down and check the video to analyze and be in the video more often than on our feet.
Now, Stade Olympique Hamadi Agrebi in Tunis is where the Brazilians take on Esperance Tunis tomorrow night, first leg of their Champions League semi-final, live on SABC 1 at 9 p.m. Now, the Premier Soccer League, they've just announced the highly anticipated Nedbank Cup semi-final venues and dates. It'll be on the 4th and 5th of May. Saturday's face-off features the 2021 finalists, Chippa United, and the defending champions, Orlando Pirates, at Nelson Mandela Bay Stadium. The following day, Stellenbosch FC and Mamelodi Sundowns will compete for the remaining spot in the finals at Dani Craven Stadium in the Western Cape. Both matches will kick off at 3 p.m. and you can catch the action-packed semi-final lineup on SABC Sport. Rugby, the Lions, they're gearing up for a monumental clash against Leinster, touted as the best attacking team in the URC. It'll all happen this Saturday, 3 p.m. at Ellis Park. Defence coach Jacques Fourie is fine-tuning strategies to counter Leinster's newfound defensive prowess and their high-flying attack.
If you want to be in the top 8, our main focus was, we need to win our games at home. It doesn't matter who the team is. Even though Leinster is a quality side, we saw that again over the weekend. But any team that they will bring over to South Africa will be well prepared, well prepped, and they will be up for the challenge. So whichever team they bring, we must just know, it's going to be a great challenge for us.
And finally, tennis. Emma Raducanu has set up a quarterfinal against the world number 1 Iga Swiatek with a 6-love, 7-5 win against Linda Noskova, and that's in the Porsche Tennis Grand Prix in Stuttgart. We'll bring you more sport on Sunrise. Top of the hour, I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. Why is there a jet engine linked to the Concorde generating electricity in the centre of Joburg? You'll find out in the next half hour. You're with SFM leading the conversation. Book your slot now for your story of the week at 7:30.
Thank you, Stephen. In your headlines, 27 post office branches in Limpopo have closed down. Provincial Secretary of the Communication Workers Union, Amos Chabalala, says the Polokwane and Westernburg branches are the only ones operating. There is more than 30,000 teaching vacancies countrywide. This was revealed by Basic Education Minister Angie Motshekga in a written parliamentary reply to a question posed by DAMP Baxolile Nodada. And big explosions have been reported near an army base airport in the central city of Isfahan in Iran, activating local air defense systems. There are indications that this may be Israeli retaliation for the Iranian strikes against it 6 days ago. I'll have details on these and other stories at 8.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Very heavy on Route 1 out of Pretoria to Joburg this morning. Two issues to bring you up to speed with. One is a stationary truck just after the Montana exit, so the N1 South moving through Sifaka-Makato down towards Stormfall's quite heavy. And then you get into a real big backlog, crash blocking 2 lanes down at John Foster Drive in Centurion, and the N1 there parking back through Borta Avenue and back towards the R21 and looking particularly heavy. The N3, again, another busy morning from Germiston on your way through towards Edenvale. Crash scenes at Heldenace and at Modderfontein Road. So delays all the way up through Galulis and into Edenvale. Behind that, M12 and R24. It's again badly backed up coming in from Ekurhuleni because of the issues on the N3 going north. Also crash if you're arriving in from the Vaal on the R59 near Michelle Avenue. So some queuing pressure from Swartkoppes Road. Durban, couple of big lights out. The M7 at St John's Avenue Bridge territory. So going in from Hunstedman, it's busy to Pinetown. Lights are out on the Higginson Highway at Mobeni. So really big queues out of Chatsworth this morning. And the M4 is under pressure. Jacobs Clarewood all the way through to central Durban due to an overrun with some overnight roadworks on that section. Cape Town, it is a misty start again this morning. It's about the third day of some pretty heavy mist. It's not everywhere, but where it is lying quite heavy and quite thick and reducing visibility. So make sure you just got some extra time to get through safely. The N1 inbound has a breakdown at Parow, so delays coming through from Plattocliff Hill. M5 busy, but only really from sort of Rondebosch up towards Kuburg. Get a change. And the M3 has got a lot of traffic pressure this morning, queuing up from Constantia right through to Paradise Road in the Bishop's Court area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
Intaleng Lechele, morning again. How are the markets?
Well, things aren't looking good for equity markets today. Asian stocks leading the losses with Japan's Nikkei down 2.5% and the Asia Dow shedding 1.9%. Markets in that region digesting inflation data from Japan. Prices eased, but there's been concerns about the weakening yen. Investors also eyeing those geopolitical tensions. And it's those particular tensions that have boosted oil, with prices sitting at $89 per barrel. However, U.S. stock futures tanking following reports of explosions in a city in western Iran. Of course, this comes amid fears of a wider conflict between Israel and Iran. The fears will surely filter through to local markets. We did see a rebound yesterday with the all share up 0.4% at the close, but it will be interesting to see whether this can be sustained in today's trade.
And then Nestle, I mean, they're a huge company. They've been accused of adding sugar to baby food products on our continent.
Yes, now Nestle has come under fire this week as a report revealed that 2 of its best-selling baby food brands sold in South Africa and other low and middle-income countries contain high levels of added sugar and honey, while such products are sugar-free in Switzerland, where the company is based. Now, this is according to research by an investigative Swiss NGO, Public Eye, and the International Baby Food Action Network, which found these high content of sugar and honey in products such as Cerelac and Nido. So the move goes against international guidelines. We've had the World Health Organization and United Nations recommending banning the addition of sugars and sweetness to baby food products, as it may contribute to childhood obesity. Nestle, in the meantime, has been not responding to any of these claims.
And then Altron, their FinTech Household Resilience Index. What is that telling us?
So it comes as no surprise, Stephen, that local households are buckling under pressure, and this index shows us that. Of course, households are coming under immense pressure because they are dealing with high interest rates and elevated inflation. So the index did show that it rose 1.4% in the fourth quarter, but 6 of the 20 constituent indicators remained in negative territory, while another 3, including household disposable income, recorded growth of less than 1%. The most concerning trend to note is a declining trend in the ratio of household income to debt costs. So households are now using 9% of their disposable incomes to pay debt costs. This is a big jump from the 6.7% figure that was recorded in the same quarter about 2 years ago.
Intaleng Lechele, thanks very much indeed. Do appreciate it. And of course, more from her next week. Have a good weekend, Intaleng. More business news during the day here on SFM. 24 minutes now to 8 o'clock.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
That's the number, of course. Lots going on this morning. We'll speak to John Steenhuisen as part of our series of conversations with political leaders in our studios from 8 o'clock this morning. Voice notes coming through on 0614 104 107.
Good morning, Stephen. Can I just make a comment on the issue of MK and IEC? I think MKA, they must relax so that IEC can do their work. You know, every house have rules to govern or values to govern. So IEC in this case, they are doing what is within their hand to ensure that everything is run accordingly.
Yeah, well, we still wait, of course, the reasons from the Electoral Court, don't we? And then we don't know if the Constitutional Court will decide to hear the appeal or not. So very difficult kind of times, difficult to know exactly how all of this is going to play out. Other voice notes coming through this morning. We were talking about unrecored SIM cards earlier. I don't know if you have any suggestions on how to deal with that. Other voice notes this morning.
Good morning, SFM and to listeners. It's Selvin Governor from Durban. Mr. SJ, I'd like to suggest to the IEC, please on voting day to have marshals in the queue for the elderly people. Please excuse the elderly people and let the marshals bring the elderly people right to the front of the queue. We don't want elderly people standing in the queue and getting sick and fainting. So please get marshals in the queue to let all the elderly people come front of the queue and vote first. Just my suggestion. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that'll probably happen anyway, actually. I would like to think that there'll be a bit of management. You can also apply for a special vote, which might be a good idea as well. All right, your calls this morning, 086 000 2032. There's the issue of unrecored SIM cards that we've been talking about. Busisim Kwabane, the EFF MP, former public protector, she won that case yesterday against Koleka Koleka, the current public protector. Life in Tshwane, is it getting better or not? The Mayor, Celia Brink, for the DA, he was talking about that yesterday. And then Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, the Minister of Home Affairs, saying this week that he wants all spaza shops to be registered and to pay tax. I don't know if you see that that's actually going to happen or not. Now, if you go to a spaza shop, are you paying cash or are you tapping with your card or something like that? You see those little blue machines everywhere now. So there might well be records of transactions and things like that. But do you think that that is actually going to work? 21 minutes to 8.
The Royal Club says victory on home soil is non-negotiable, but Ghanaian outfit Dreams FC can smell maximum points as a dream come true. The capital of Egypt faces the capital of Ghana. This is the first leg of the Total Energies CAF Confederation Cup semi-final. Catch Zamalek Sporting Club up against Dreams FC live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 this Sunday, 21 April at 6 p.m. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Freedom Month on SAFM. The month in which we had our first democratic election 30 years ago. This Freedom Month, as we reflect on the progress made thus far, we continue to commemorate the selfless sacrifices made for our democracy and freedom. SAFM, leading the conversation.
Stephen Grootes on SAFM.
20 minutes to 8 the time. Well, news this week about an open gas turbine which has been refurbished. It's been in the city of Joburg in Fordsburg for many years. Now it's up and running again. It's going to produce around 50 megawatts of electricity for Joburg. Tami Matiso is the Group Executive for New Business at City Power. Tami, good morning.
Good morning to you, Stephen, and good morning to the listeners.
This thing sounds like a jet engine. Is it something like that?
Most definitely, it's a jet engine, and which were used previously on the Concorde aircrafts, and it's an open cycle gas turbine.
So basically, you can get quite a lot of electricity out of a very small space.
Yes, most definitely. So these are two engines that are located in Fordsburg, so they actually can run and they are able to generate about 50 megawatts on them.
Why are they in Fordsburg? Has they been there for a long time?
They've been there for a long time. In fact, from the history on the organization, we know that they've been there from 1977. They ran until around 1986 when they were decommissioned at the time, when the electricity price was low. During the preparation of the 2010 World Cup, they were brought back again to service. And so we are bringing back again now to service so that we can mitigate load shedding.
Okay, so the only reason they stopped running was because the price was low. So now they're suddenly economical again. Would that be right?
Yeah, so what the reason why we stopped them previously was because of the price of electricity was low, so it would not have been economical for us to run them at the time. But now what we have done is that we're doing the numbers using a formula which is called the cost of unsaved energy, which is the impact of outages or power blackouts during load shedding against the economy, and that's why it motivated us to bring them back to service.
So if it's a jet engine, what kind of fuel is it using? I mean, it's not using what you put in my car.
So the nice part about those open cycle gas turbines can use diesel and they can use jet fuel. So for now, as we were doing a test run and commissioning them, we've used diesel because they were using diesel before, but in the few weeks we'll convert them back to jet fuel.
How much impact is it going to make? I mean, 50 megawatts, what's the demand in Joburg then? It's around 2,500 megawatts.
Yeah, so Joburg peak demand is about 2,400, and our stage is about 5% of that. So what is actually happening is that this is the first amongst the other initiatives that we're going to have to make sure that we either push back and power back into the grid for us to be able to mitigate load shedding in the city.
How often are you going to run it? You don't keep it on all the time.
Yet, so we have, according to our feasibility studies, we can run them for about 8 hours in a day. So we can be able to mitigate most of the period during the day and business hours during a load shedding period.
It's interesting. I mean, are there any other sort of things like this lying around in Joburg that you could use? Because obviously load shedding's been a real problem in Joburg, like in other places.
Most definitely. So what is actually happening, we've got 4 of the open cycle gas turbines. We've got one that we're going to be commissioning again in Durban Street, which is east of Johannesburg, which is another 50 megawatt power plant. We call them twins. With this one, they are almost identical. We are funded by the Gauteng province, so I think that's one of the reasons that we are able to bring them back into service. The other 2, we are still waiting for other people who can be able to fund us so that we can also bring them back into service and see if we can then be able to mitigate load shedding. But there are other programs that we are running as the city, things like demand side management and the issues of load limiting and some of the renewable energy that we are bringing into the space.
So in the next couple of years, I mean, how much electricity do you think City Power will actually be getting itself rather than from Eskom? Is it possible to know? I mean, how many megawatts do you think you'll have in the system that come from things you control or your own contracts with other people rather than Eskom?
Yeah, our target in terms of our energy mix is to reduce reliance maybe by 2030, about 50% from Eskom, and use some of the IPPs and some of the open cycle gas turbines and some of the initiatives that we've laid out in our sustainable energy strategy.
And then demand for electricity in Joburg. We know that many people have solar companies are doing it for themselves in a way. What's that doing to demand for electricity in Joburg?
Yeah, definitely. Our sales have been under pressure because we, as City Power, get our sales from buying electricity from Eskom and selling it to the customers. And I think that's why we needed to come up with this an initiative. So what we've seen, we've started a voluntary registration process where customers who are installing their solar panels have come forward and said, I've got a solar panel. And currently we've registered around 150 megawatts of customers. We know that might be a bit little, but we are trying to get some of the initiatives so that the data comes forward and see how we can work with those customers.
I mean, revenue is very important for you, and the electricity revenue through City Power is very important for the city of Joburg. Is this going to reduce the revenue that you get?
It will reduce the revenue that we get, but what we are looking at is to make sure that we convert our business into a wires business. So even if we do not sell the actual electrons, but we'll allow participation. So if you've got a solar PV in your house and you want to sell excess energy back into the grid, we will be able to buy it from you and sell it to other customers. So we allow that participation and energy trading to take place.
Tami Matiso, thank you very much indeed. Group Executive for New Business at City Power. 14 minutes to 8.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
This issue around SIM cards has been a big issue this week. Hamilton and Dobsonville, hi.
Hi, Steve. How are you?
Yeah, I'm well. Go for it.
Yes. I think if you remember very well, Nigeria once fined the MTN for not being registered SIM card, and they were fined heavily. So I think that is the only option that can help us, because you can find in malls, especially during the holidays, you will find service providers giving SIM cards for free, and all the SIM cards are already recharged.
Yeah. So you reckon we need to find the MTNs and the Vodacoms and the Cell Cs of the world?
Yeah. Exactly. And we don't have to find them little money like we are always doing with other operators. They need to be fined heavily so that they know that if one SIM card goes unregistered, they are going to lose a lot. In that way, most of these ones will be resolved. Because we're not manufacturing our own SIM cards, we're getting them from the service providers.
Yeah.
And then getting them for free, unregistered. And then we're able to do crime and do our will with it. So that's the only option.
All right, Hamilton and Dobsonville, thank you. Yeah, look, I don't know if that'll work or not. Chris and Peter Maritzburg, hi. All of this comes from the Senzo Meyer trial, by the way. There were conversations around this yesterday. Chris, hi.
Hi, Stephen. I just don't want to repeat what the previous caller has said, but it also signified the paralysis in the regulatory environment.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. The people who are supposed should also be made to account. Why are they allowing this? Because it's not like something that has started yesterday. And we already have the cases that he has mentioned. But on the second point, we also have a case, an international case, people collecting data illegally without getting consent, which is one of the things that people have mentioned. And we know that people have been fined, I think, in the UK and the US, because that's exactly what is happening. That's why we are getting so many of these calls. Unless we strengthen our regulatory environment and do not allow anyone to do as they please, we will continue having this problem, and people will continue calling South Africa banana republic.
Yeah, Chris, it's all about enforcing the laws, eh? I mean, it always boils down to that, doesn't it?
That's it, and somebody wanting to be a bad guy.
Yeah. All right.
For the sake of the country.
Yeah, Chris and Peter Maritzburg, thank you. In Corsi and Cape Town, Home Affairs, is this about the regulations or the registration of spaza shops?
Yes, Stephen, you know what Mr. Motsoaledi has raised is very important. This has been my desire. You know, these spaza shops, if you go to these spaza shops requesting cashback. If you're requesting a cashback of 200 rand, they charge you 40 rand.
Really?
Yes. If you're requesting a cashback of 100 rand, they charge you 10 rand.
Sure.
If you are swiping something from them, if you are buying something there by using your card, they charge you 5 rand.
Yeah.
And those people, they don't contribute anything on this country. So I think it's very important for them to pay tax as well. Because we're being used by these foreigner shops.
All right.
Serious. And let alone this thing of selling poison food.
Yeah.
These people are here to destroy this country. And yet they are not contributing anything on this country, Brother Stephen. So Motsoaledi is right by saying these people should pay tax. Thank you.
All right, and Corsi on the line from Cape Town. Thank you. Look, I don't think anyone's deliberately trying to poison people, and we keep hearing these cases. We never get to the bottom of it. Eddie in Oudendaal's Rus. Eddie, hi, electricity.
Hi, SG, how are you?
Yeah, well, go for it.
Thank you very much. No, you know, the guy that you spoke about the Joburg electricity, I'm tempted to say, you see, the power of innovation. If there was no load shedding, we're not going to get these ideas. So what I want to say is that in every challenge, South Africans, let's see possibilities of innovation.
Yeah.
This guy, your last caller just spoke about the cashback.
Mm.
You know what? If post offices are closing, why can't we have cooperatives that are in dealing with finances? We have a lot of students who are sitting at home. You know, some of them, they did economics and so on. Why can't they take that opportunity? So what I'm saying, in every challenge, let's see opportunity. Thank you very much.
All right, Eddie and Odendaelsrus, thank you. Yeah, look, you know, there's a reason why Please Call Me was invented in South Africa. Maybe we need a Please Call Me moment. 9 minutes to 8.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Two heavy queues coming down the N1 leaving Pretoria this morning. One is between Montana and Stormville Road. That's a stationary big truck that's causing that obstruction. And then it gets really super thick and super heavy down to John Foster. A crash blocking multiple lanes at John Foster. Traffic's all the way back through to Rigel Avenue. So that is a really big queue for a Friday morning. Big queue any time of the day. But a major delay alert if you're leaving Pretoria. Trying to avoid the highway between Rigel and John Foster. Otherwise, travel later if you can do that. A crash on the R59 at Michelle Avenue. Quite a heavy queue coming up through Swartkoppes Road. The N12 and R24 routes into Galulis remain heavy due to congestion on the N3 running north after crash scenes up in the Edenvale area. Just if you find yourself bottom of Mpumalanga, maybe Mpumalanga KZN border area, Volksrus, just north of Volksrus, there's some stop-go controls that have appeared there. It's quite a heavy wait to get through both directions on the N11. That's the nature of stop-go controls. Durban side this morning, the N2 north from the M7 up through Spaghetti Junction's heavy. Lighter down on the M7 going into Pinetown, so delays from the N3 highway, and lights off on the Higginson Highway at Mobeni, still causing a major delay from sort of Bayview territory. It's really heavy coming out of Chatsworth this morning. Cape Town, third or fourth morning in a row of heavy mist. I've lost count of it actually, but it is quite widespread, and where it is lingering, it is quite thick as well. So reduced visibility in some parts of Cape Town. Lights on, drive safely if it's like that where you are. Lights are out Main and Stanhope in Claremont. That's causing delays in that central area. And the N7 north looking slow passing Langa to Epping, and then Goodwood up to Bosmansdam slow as well. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
USM Alger and RSB Pekane will demonstrate what a North African derby looks like. Who are the real heroes of the North between the Algerians and the Moroccans? This is the first leg of the Total Energies CAF Confederation Cup semi-final. USM Alger versus RSB Pekane. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. This Sunday, 21 April at 9 p.m. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk.
All right, you know the number 086 000 2032. Willie on the line from Kuma. Willie, hi. This issue of spaza shops, can the minister register them?
Look, Stephen, first and foremost, Minister of Internal of Home Affairs is always on point. Always on point. It's only some other institutions would be against him. But the situation stays with us here, unemployment, this and this and this and this and this. Look, spaza shops actually used to be registered. And then spaza shops, of course, they have to pay tax. I remember that the president himself was saying the other day when we complained about spaza shops, and then he said it's only that there were some negligence when 1994 started, in as far as some of the regulations or some of the laws that used to be there, and then those laws were abandoned, such as the inspectors around the spaza shops. He confessed, even the president himself. Now, the minister shortly, the minister is on point, because actually I remember in Botswana, the Botswana says the businesses must start with the local people first. You remember, Stephen, when you were still young, these spaza shops, it's very heartbreaking, started with us black people over here. But unfortunately, because maybe business is not for black people, unfortunately. And then my heart is bleeding because the very same foreign nationals here, I'm talking about something that I see here even on the ground. They don't even hire local people in their shops. They do this themselves. They work for themselves. Yeah. But we used to hire our people when we were having this spaza shop. So therefore, they must pay tax.
All right. Willie, on the line from Kuma. Thanks, yeah. All right. No, I mean, I think it's hard to say that they shouldn't pay tax. Willie on the line from Kuma, 5 minutes to 8.
At SFM Radio and at Stephen Grootes on Twitter.
There's been a lot of talk this week around the water situation in Joburg. In fact, I know the Joburg Crisis Committee, I think it is, are having a big summit about this over the weekend. And of course, the issue is, are we looking down the nose of a really big crisis in terms of water in Joburg? Been various reports. News 24 had a big report suggesting that Joburg just doesn't have the money to do the proper maintenance. Professor Anthony Turton's an expert on water at the University of the Free State. Professor Turton, good morning.
Good morning to you and listeners. Thanks for having me.
We see, I think, more and more around the country of greater awareness of the problem of water systems. In Joburg in particular, I don't know if there's action from officials. Do you think people actually realize, do you think that people are actually moving as quickly as they need to fix some of the problems that we're seeing in Joburg?
Look, I get a sense that there's certainly a growing awakening, at all different levels. Up until now, there's been a lot of deflection and, blame shifting, etc. But I do definitely get a sense now of urgency coming from all sorts of levels, from the presidency all the way down, ministers down to MMCs. It really is starting to take hold now.
So we obviously, I would like to think, have the technical skills. The money is a problem. I worry a little bit about the politics. Everybody needs to work together, and I don't know if that's happening.
Well, I think that is a problem. And, even when it comes to technical skills, we do have the technical skills, but the politics of exclusion up until now are just so powerful that I'm not sure that we're going to be able to bring those technical skills to bear. And, it's a very, very difficult thing to unravel this. But, it is fixable. It can be fixed. The question is, well, there are a few questions, but the one question is, can we go into a procurement cycle that is fast enough in able to get ahead of the curve? And when I realized this was a couple of years ago, about 2015, 2016, thereabouts, when I was brought in as an external consultant to do a review of the Rooiwal wastewater treatment works there. And what was quite clear at that point in time at Rooiwal, if we can learn the lesson from Rooiwal, was that the procurement processes were unable to keep track of the speed needed to avert a disaster. So I suspect that same thing is going to happen now in the Johannesburg case. The procurement rules, the procurement processes are just of such a nature that they are going to delay the rollout. And on the one hand, and on the other hand, of course, we also know that when those procurement rules are bypassed, that's also a wonderful recipe for corruption to take place. So we're in that dilemma now between the need to speed up the rollout on the one hand, and the prevention of the corruption of the system on the other.
Professor, I wonder if we're at an important moment for another reason as well, which is that what we've seen happen in electricity is that richer people and companies bought their way out of the system if they had to. And that means when that happens in a society, and it's not just happened here, it's happened in other places, it's much harder for poorer people to put pressure on government to fix a problem. Now, water is different to electricity technically. You need to store it. With electricity, that's slightly easier. You can't really generate water on your own site unless you live in one of those very few areas where it rains very often. But I still worry that the private sector, the rich, boreholes, things like that, might buy their way out of the problem, and that makes it harder for poorer people to actually put pressure on government to change things.
Just as I've seen a growing awareness amongst officials about the crisis, I've also seen an absolute growing awareness amongst, let's call them the more affluent people or the business people. They realise that they have to basically level the playing field. So they're not looking to government to level the playing field. Just yesterday, I spent the whole day up in the upper reaches of the Mgani River down in KZN, and to my very great surprise, there you had commercial farmers, highly successful commercial farmers, and then you had these community farmers, informal farmers. And there were more informal farmers than formal farmers, and it was a grassroots initiative to transfer skills, to close that gap, because the realization that if that gap is allowed to get bigger and bigger, that simply becomes the fuel revolution. So I think there's a reawakening in society, all over the show at all different levels. And you must remember that water is such an important issue that it's the one issue that has the capacity to unite a society. It does not have to divide a society. So the power of water to unite, the power of water to heal even, okay? Now, this is an important aspect that we must not lose sight of.
Professor Anthony Turton, thank you. Really appreciate the time. I think we are at an important moment in this. All right, you were there, SFM. After the news, we'll have 20 minutes, 25 minutes or so with the leader of the Democratic Alliance, John Steenhuisen, part of our series of conversations with political leaders ahead of the elections. Don't forget your story of the week. Book your spot now. You were there, SFM, leading the conversation. It's 8 o'clock.
Thank you, Stephen. In your top stories, the 27 post office branches in Limpopo closed and more than 30,000 teaching vacancies remain unfilled. This is SAFM News. A very good morning. I am Luyanda Maume. 27 post office branches in Limpopo have closed. Provincial Secretary of the Communication Workers Union, Amos Chabalala, says the Polokwane and the Westernburg branches are the only ones operating. The state-owned entity has been experiencing financial challenges in the last few years, and the Gauteng High Court in Pretoria ordered it to be placed under business rescue last year. The entity provides the public with banking, car license renewal and mail services, amongst others. Some residents residing in the rural areas say they are now struggling to get information since the closures.
As elderly people, we can't do emails, but with the post office, we were able to get letters. Now that they have shut down, it's very painful. We want the government to help us.
We were able to get letters from far away when the post office was operating, but now we can't get anything because they are closing down, which means we can't get letters anymore.
The Office of the Public Protector is today expected to furnish the former Public Protector Advocate Bosisiwe Mkhwebane with record and reasons explaining why her 10 million rand gratuity was withheld. This after the Gauteng High Court in Pretoria ordered the Office of the Public Protector to do so yesterday. Mkhwebane launched an urgent review over non-payment of the gratuity after the PP's office in February allegedly informed her that she would not be receiving it due to her impeachment in September last year. The legal counsel on behalf of the office had argued that papers filed by the applicant did not compel the respondents to hand over the records. The Chapter 9 institution, which is the first respondent in the matter, has been hit with punitive cost. Judge Colleen Collis.
In the present matter, these steps had not been followed as the record and the reasons for the decision had not been furnished. The failure to have furnished the record has the unintended consequence that the application to date is not ripe for hearing, as all the necessary affidavits that ought to have been filed is not before the court to date.
There is more than 30,000 teaching vacancies countrywide. This was revealed by Basic Education Minister Angie Motshekga in a written parliamentary reply. The question was posed by DAMP Baxolile Nodada. The top three provinces with massive vacant positions are KwaZulu-Natal, Eastern Cape and Limpopo. The minister says filling of vacant posts at schools is an ongoing process to ensure that there's no class without a teacher for all the grades. Lula Mamaja reports.
The reply indicates that KwaZulu-Natal tops the list with more than 7,000 vacancies. The Eastern Cape has more than 6,000, followed by Limpopo with nearly 5,000 vacancies. The Western Cape is the fourth province with highest vacancy rate.
6 men arrested in connection with the hijacking and murder of Kaizer Chiefs defender Luke Fleurs are expected to apply for bail when the case resumes in the Roodepoort Magistrates Court in the west of Johannesburg this morning. Fleurs was shot and killed during a hijacking incident in Roodepoort earlier this month. Puseletso Mugwena reports.
The 6 suspects were arrested in Slovoville in Soweto on Wednesday last week, and they are believed to be part of a syndicate responsible for car hijacking in Gauteng. 24-year-old Fleurs was shot and killed at a petrol station in Honeydew before the assailants made off with his vehicle, which was later found stripped. The case was postponed last week to today to allow them to appoint legal representatives and to prepare for a bail application. The state says it will oppose bail. Puselotso Mokoena, SABC News.
And finally, big explosions have been reported near an army base airport in the central city of Isfahan in Iran, activating local air defense systems. Blasts have also been reported in other locations in Iraq and Syria. There are indications that this may be Israeli retaliation for the Iranian strikes against it 6 days ago. The BBC's Charles Haviland reports.
2 U.S. officials have told the BBC's partner organisation, CBS News, that an Israeli missile has hit Iran. The Israeli military, however, said it had no immediate comment on the reports of blasts in Iran's third biggest city, Isfahan, which is home to nuclear sites and to a military airbase, and at some locations in other parts of the country, including Tabriz in the northwest. The Pentagon won't comment either. Official and semi-official media outlets in Iran report that flights have been suspended to some major cities, but they're also downplaying the strikes.
Recapping your top story, 27 post office branches in Limpopo have been closed down, leaving users stranded. For SAFM News, I am Luyanda Maume. Headlines at 8:30.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM sports headlines, it's United Rugby Championship action. The Sharks set sail to tackle Glasgow, while home the Lions await Leinster. And in soccer action, Mamelodi Sundowns gear up to silence Esperance in the CAF semi-finals. Catch the details just before 8:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Well, when taken as a whole, it's not a bad Friday for a commute around Gauteng province. The glaring exception is this major crash on the M1 south of John Foster. Multiple lanes are closed and traffic backed all the way through to Rigel Avenue. It's a super thick and super heavy backlog of traffic. Either travel later, get onto some alternative routes, or give yourself plenty of time to get through it. It really is heavy across all lanes, multiple lanes. About 3 lanes are closed at that particular crash scene. Durban's pretty busy this morning. The M2 going north from the M7 up through Spaghetti Junction. A crash before the interchange and the roadworks shortly thereafter. The M4 Umbilo into CBD territory stays busy, and queues on the M7 into Pine Town. There's some traffic lights down around the St John's Avenue Bridge territory. Cape Town side, the M2 inbound queuing up from Langa through to Hospital Bend. The M3 is busy, but only really now from sort of Rhodes Drive. That big backlog coming through from Constantia is eased up, but sort of from Paradise Road through to UCT and onto Hospital Bend, it stays busy. And of course, that mist warning for Cape Town. Drive carefully, please, if it's misty where you are. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
8 after 8, good morning, you're with SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. Don't forget, from 8:30, your story of the week. Book your spot now, 086 000 2032. Might be about the SIM cards, which has been a big discussion this morning coming out of the Senzo Mia murder trial. Might well be about something completely different. Still lots of conversations, I think, around Umkhonto weSizwe and former President Jacob Zuma and issues around that. Other issues coming up as well. We were talking earlier about whether or not this election will change things, do away with what Dr. Mampela Rampele describes as our transactional politics. In a moment, he's already in the studio, the leader of the Democratic Alliance, John Steenhuisen, part of our series of speaking to political leaders ahead of the elections. It's 8 after 8. Good morning.
5-time champions plan to capitalize on home ground advantage, while 11-time champs have a huge strategy to dominate the battle from the first whistle. This is the first leg of the Total Energies CAF Champions League semi-final. Experience the exhilaration of African football. TP Mazembe FC versus Al Ahly FC. Live on SABC1 this Saturday, 20 April at 2:30 p.m. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Stephen Grootes on SAFM.
All right, Friday morning, first morning for us of a new series of conversations with leaders, with people from political parties ahead of the elections. John Steenhuisen is the leader of the Democratic Alliance, and he's in our studio now. John, good morning. Thanks for coming in.
Good morning, Stephen. Great to be with you and, of course, with all the listeners today. Thank you for the opportunity.
It seems to me, just looking at it, from a sort of radio studio, in a way it's a tough election for quite a strange reason, which is that there are more parties, more candidates, and I think probably more issues. So there isn't one. I've been interested that, and I said this when we started the show this morning, there aren't just 1, 2, 3 or 4 issues. There seem to be lots of different issues. A worry maybe that people are sort of talking past each other. Are you finding this election campaign that different to previous elections?
Well, certainly the thing that's made the big difference is I think that the people are a lot more activated than they've been in elections previously. And I put that down to the fact that for the last 5 years, government failures have now reached into people's homes, switched off the electricity, cut off the water, led to poor service delivery. And I think people are feeling now that their political choices have consequences. So I think there's a much higher activation amongst people. But what is strange, and perhaps not so strange, is that if I look at our polling that we do, and we run a significant polling operation, this is the first election where the top issues are virtually exactly the same across all race demographics and all income groups and all LSM groups. And it's topped with the economy and jobs, it's crime, it's education, it's load shedding, and it's corruption. These are the things that are common now. In the past, you'd see on a sliding scale of the issues a top 10, but here the top 5 are all the same amongst everybody in South Africa that's worrying about these things.
We've seen trends over the years where, a large percentage of people don't vote, and in fact, sort of voter involvement reduces. I know you've got to be a bit careful because people look at local government elections and that can be different. Are you suggesting if people are more activated that we could have a very high turnout in this election?
I think we are going to have a high turnout in this election, and there will also be implications of that, especially when you want to try and manage a differential turnout. I think that people are a lot more activated, and I think the proxy for that was the massive registration drive and the uptake in registration, particularly amongst younger voters, which has certainly exceeded previous elections. And I think that shows there is a heightened awareness of the importance of this election and what it means for the future of not only our citizens but also the country.
You're campaigning with parties in the multi-party charter movement. You've had big negotiations with them. So you're campaigning with them but sort of against them. What's that like?
Well, I think it's gone a lot better than I think that any of us expected. Of course, the multi-party charter is not a coalition. It's a pre-election pact. Each of the parties retains their own identity, and the job is that they go on the hunt to maximise the votes that they have available to them and bring them back to the table. So, of course, there's room, and the agreement says there's room to, this is going to be a robust election campaign. It's not an egg and spoon race. We've got, robust things to talk about. But there is a non-aggression clause with the MPC, and where we do try and avoid the spectre of big public spats, because I think it undermines the confidence of voters that these guys are able to work together to form a government. And I think we have been able to contain these largely. There's been a few things around the edges, but I think by and large, the parties in the charter are focusing as much as they can on trying to get votes off the ANC.
I was going to say, we're testing the definitions of the phrase non-aggression, aren't we, in some cases? And you in Action SA, for some reason, I don't know why it's a you in Action SA, but occasionally I look at press releases and I go, oh, they look like best of friends.
Well, of course, and I think that, the parties have to try and define themselves, and Action SA was essentially a breakaway from the DA, so of course there's perhaps some scars from battles past, but what we've tried to do as the leaders is leave those at the door when we come in to sit around a table. And I think a measure of the success of this is the fact that we've been able to come up with 7 common policies as the MPC that we've been releasing to people. Policies on how we're going to end load shedding, how we're going to end cadre deployment and bring in place a proper civil service, how we're going to keep citizens safe. And there's been a good synthesis of the various policies of the parties, and I think it's that maturity that voters are expecting from us going into this election as the multi-party charter. One of the key lessons we learnt about in Germany when we went over to look at best practice and a variety of coalition environments there was that it's best to do your fighting behind closed doors rather than to do it in the public. And certainly I've had to be very restrained and really making a big effort to make sure, particularly on social media and other places, that you don't get involved in squabbles with your partners, because I don't think it promotes confidence amongst voters that these guys can then form a government that's going to be stable going forward.
Do you take your phones with you to these closed-door conversations? There's been a big focus in going into the election. The big focus was that will the ANC fall below 50%? That was sort of the big story of the year. And obviously, with the introduction of MK, that sort of changes a little bit. And there are all sorts of polls, and you say you do your own polling. I've not seen any poll or any prediction that you and your party as the DA and the multi-party charter together could get above 50%. I mean, your polling surely has you altogether still below 50%, right?
Yes, of course it does. And, that's what the challenge is over the next 40-odd days, is to try and get as many votes in the bag, particularly to activate the 14 million people who didn't vote in the last election. I think that as we get closer to the election and the binary in the election starts to emerge much more clearly for voters, that you can have a choice between a doomsday coalition of the ANC, the EFF and the MK, or you can have the MPC, the multi-party charter, on the other hand. I think that people would start to solidify behind the better option of those two, which is clearly a change in government, putting new people around the cabinet table to make decisions. And I think that as that binary starts to solidify in voters' minds, you're going to see those numbers start to move in the right direction.
You seem very confident that it'll come down to that. I mean, I don't know if it will. In a way, I know that you've been campaigning, the president's been campaigning, other people have been campaigning, but I suspect the ANC campaign will move into a higher gear right towards the end of the election, won't it?
Well, of course, and like the DA has a big blue machine, the ANC has a big yellow machine. It's got very clunky and clumsy and underfunded over the years, but you don't write the ANC off, and I've said that very clearly to not only my own party but also to our partners. So we mustn't, see this as a given. The most dangerous animal in the African bushveld is a wounded buffalo, and the ANC are a very wounded buffalo, with people coming for them from all sides and eating away at their support. So I wouldn't take anything for granted, and I think you will see the posters will eventually go up, that their squeeze will start, but we're prepared for that. And the challenge the ANC have in this election is that they're going to have to squeeze in all directions. MK is eating their lunch in KZN, Gauteng and other provinces. They've got the DA, which is a huge concern for them. So who do you squeeze? Where do you focus your resources? And I think for the first election, the ANC are going to really be up against it, and I think that's a good thing for democracy.
In the Western Cape, so everyone talks about the ANC falling below 50%, but in the Western Cape, there are predictions that you as the DA will fall below 50%. You'd have to work with other parties. Are you preparing for that?
Well, I'm trying to prepare the Western Cape not to do that, and making the case to people there that this is a province that works. This is a province that doesn't talk about job creation, delivered 368,000 jobs last year. Doesn't talk about fighting crime. It arrested 27,000 criminals through the LEAP program. We've got an economy that's growing. We've got services that are provided. Obviously, you want to encourage the voters of the Western Cape to say, be careful, because a DA majority is not a given. It's going to come down to you turning out. It's going to come down to you making sure you don't split the vote. And it's going to come down to making sure that we hold the one province that is already controlled by the opposition. And together, if we can get KZN and Gauteng in the bag, that's 66% of the economy, 63% of the population in control of the multi-party charter parties. And that would, I think, be a very positive thing for South Africa.
If the Western Cape is so well governed, why are you going to fall? Why are you losing support? I mean, there's no prediction, and you didn't take the opportunity to say you'll do better than you did 5 years ago. All predictions are you'll do worse. So if life is so good in the Western Cape, why isn't your share of the vote going
I think
up?
we will do better than we did in the last election in the Western Cape, and certainly our polling has us doing better than some of the other polls. And I'm confident we will retain our majority. But it is important to let people know that complacency is the biggest enemy of good governance. I think it's very easy after 15 years of good governance for people in the Western Cape to take for granted that when they open their taps, there's water in it, unlike Johannesburg. That when they drive on their roads, they're not exploding, that they are virtually pothole-free, that their children are getting a quality education. All of these things become to be taken for granted and assumed that they'll always be there. Just like the residents in Knysna assumed that good governance was a given. A bustling holiday town, growing economy. The DA's majority there was reduced. We fell below 50%. It opened the door for the coalition of corruption to come in. Knysna today is a mess. Sewage into the lagoon, mountains of rubbish outside, a municipality that's being looted every single day by officials and councillors. And don't take these things for a given. And I think that was the message that I'm saying very clearly to the people of the Western Cape.
So, I mean, do you really think that life is really better for people in Tshwane? It doesn't seem like it. I don't think it feels like it for the people in Tshwane. You talk about water coming out of taps. They have major water problems in Tshwane.
Yes, of course. And Tshwane is a particularly difficult municipality. It's the third largest municipality in the world from a size perspective. And it's had 30 years of massive looting and corruption. And a reconstruction plan that was significantly derailed by the unlawful administration of the province, which we ended up back in office after that was declared unlawful, to find that the money had gone, and we've had to start essentially from the beginning. But I attended Cilliers' State of the City address yesterday, and certainly the upgrade from the financial outlook is welcome. I think that they've put in place the tough choices that are required to turn it around, and I remain absolutely convinced that Tshwane is on the path to a full recovery. It's going to take a little bit of time. The significant disinvestment in infrastructure over the last 30 years has affected its water and sanitation and electricity services there. But the city's putting aside in money for that infrastructure now, and it will start to get better. Just as the financial outlook is improving, service delivery will improve over the next year.
So, I mean, the thing is that what people are looking for is an improvement in their life experience. And you started off by saying that people are more actively involved because of that. They've seen the impact of bad governance. But people will immediately come back and say they don't see a difference in Khayelitsha, for example. That, yes, and you know this criticism, you'll have heard it many times, that yes, the DA governs well, but it governs well for people who are already in the middle classes, people who are already in a privileged position. And I mean, there is something to that, isn't there? I mean, has life in Khayelitsha really improved for people in the last 10 years?
Well, let me just firstly start by saying that the biggest beneficiaries of good, clean, accountable government are poor South Africans who don't have the luxury of outsourcing to private healthcare. They need to use the state healthcare system. They can't afford private security to look after them. They require the state to do so. They don't have the luxury of sending their families and that out to fancy colleges. They've got to use the state system. They can't rely on putting solar panels on the roof. They require the city and the province to do that. So my answer to you is this, is that the unfair comparison that's made is between, Khayelitsha is not Constantia. Of course it's not. We're dealing with decades of apartheid-era spatial planning and terrible marginalization of people based only on the color of their skin. So of course it doesn't look like Constantia, just as Alex doesn't look like Santon and Umlazi doesn't look like Mshlanga. But if you look at all of the metrics, and it's not the DA propaganda machine, Ratings Africa, the Auditor General, COGTA's own reports, access to basic services, much higher in DA-run municipalities, including Khayelitsha. The city's just put aside 120 billion rand over the next 10 years for infrastructure development that's bigger than all of the other Johannesburg metros, the Gauteng metros put together. 73% of that going to areas like Khayelitsha, Gugulethu and Nyanga, Langa Township, poorer neighborhoods, precisely so that we can start to one day make sure that Khayelitsha does have the same standard of living as people in Constantia.
One of the key points of this election is the economy, and particularly jobs for young people. And obviously every political party's manifesto talks to this. How would you grow the economy, particularly for younger people?
Well, particularly for younger people, first of all, for younger people or middle-aged people, you need to have the economic infrastructure there. And I think that's where South Africa has really been let down. You cannot run a viable business or attract investment or grow jobs if you've got roads where people cannot travel to get their goods to market, ports that are inefficient, no electricity and water. Those are basic things. So if what we are releasing next week is our jobs policy, a jobs and economy policy, and we look at the industrial pyramid there and focusing on getting those basic things right: water, sanitation, infrastructure, roads, electricity, and then you move up the triangle to the top. What government's trying to do is trying to pick winners at the top of the triangle and neglecting the services at the bottom. But we've also got some great innovative stuff in there, like reducing the import tariffs on small LDVs. At the moment, the stop of production of the NP200, it's affected a lot of small entrepreneurs. We said drop the import tariffs on small LDVs so that you can stimulate business. We've also just suggested turning the SRD grant into a job seekers grant. So keep the 350 going, but people must make sure that they are showing that they're looking for jobs. But the reality is, if you don't create the environment, you can dream about jobs, you will never ever get them on the ground.
From what I can see, most voters in this country support our government's application at the International Court of Justice to have Israel's actions in Gaza declared a genocide. You know how powerful this issue is. The resonance between the position of Palestinians and I think the vast majority of South Africans as black people is huge in all sorts of directions. And you don't support our application. Why not?
I've never said we don't support the application. I'd far rather that we have the ICJ determine what genocide is than radical politicians screaming and shouting on social media about whether there's a genocide or not. So I do think the question is located now where it belongs. We have the ICJ, the legislation exists, the mechanism exists, and we as a party that respects the rule of law will abide by whatever that judgment comes out and says. But I don't think it's up to individual politicians to determine whether there's a genocide or not. I think it is located exactly the right place for that question to be answered.
Are you going to lose votes because of this? I mean, there's another radio station. Their radio presenter had lunch with your mayor in Cape Town, had eat dinner with your mayor in Cape Town, was taken off air as a result. The point is that I think communities are very angry about this, and they're very angry with you about this.
Well, I don't think the anger is well placed, and I think that people must be aware of propaganda and a misstatement of the DA's position. Let me just say up front, I think pulling a journalist off air for that was appalling, and I really hope that matter is taken up by the relevant broadcasting authorities, because I think it is a terribly regressive sign that an infringement of a person's freedom of speech and association. But let me say this, our position has been very clear. The ANC keeps trying to say, oh, you're pro-Israel. We're not pro-Israel, neither are we pro-Palestinian. We're pro-peace and pro a two-state solution there. And our position has been consistent since 2014. We've said that the only solution in the Middle East and in this particular situation is to have an independent, sovereign, unoccupied Palestine living alongside a secure Israel. And that's the only way you're going to be able to move that. And we need to get those parties to the table to speak. And that's why we've said we believe there should be a ceasefire. We believe hostages should be released. And we believe the conditions should be made to prevent a wide-scale escalation, which I fear now is already started, as we see this morning, a retaliatory attack in Iran after Iran's missile attack over the weekend. It's not going to solve the situation. It's going to worsen civilian casualties. It's going to make life a lot harder for both Israelis and Palestinians. And the sooner there can be mature leadership on both sides coming to the table to talk about how they can move past this situation. And I think that South Africa's government's partisan position in this has really lost South Africa an opportunity to be a good interlocutor in that situation, because many people around the world felt that our situation was equally untractable, that we'd never bring apartheid to an end, that the two sides would never sit together. Here we are, 30 years into democracy, with a great constitution, a democracy that respects people's rights and religious views, and where the Bill of Rights is entrenched. That's the solution that we need for that region as well.
The elections are on the 29th of May. There'll be 2 or 3 weeks of shouting and screaming, closed-door negotiation, maybe, with someone. 1st of July, let's call it. Who's the president of South Africa?
It's hard to say, because it's going to determine how the cards are dealt by the voters on the 29th of May. It's very, very difficult to predict. Does Cyril Ramaphosa survive being the first ANC leader to lose a majority? We all saw how the press were eagerly salivating at the last local government elections to see if the DA dropped so they could demand my resignation. It's going to be interesting to see who's left on the field after that, and I think the tide's going to go out in this election, and you're going to see which parties have been talking a big game but not really reflected in the electoral outcome.
John Steenhuisen, leader of the Democratic Alliance, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you, Stephen. It's been great to be here.
John Steenhuisen, first in our series of conversations with political leaders ahead of the election. You with SAFM.
Match day number 30 will deliver high emotions and tension. 14th and 15th placed VfL Wolfsburg and VfL Bochum must go beyond their limits in the final stretch. Who will climb the ladder to victory? This is the Bundesliga. Football as it's meant to be. Catch VfL Wolfsburg versus VfL Bochum this Saturday, 20 April at 3 p.m. Live on SABC3. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. Lots of rugby this weekend.
Yes, it's a full house, Stephen, and it's time to rock and roll. We've got the Sharks, the first team. They'll meet the Glasgow Warriors in Scotland today. And then we've got the Lions hosting Leinster in Johannesburg. That's on Saturday. The Bulls locking horns with Munster in Pretoria, and the Stormers welcoming Ospreys in Cape Town. And soccer, the countdown to a clash of titans is on as Mamelodi Sundowns set their sights on suffocating Esperance in the CAF Champions League semi-final. The team, well drilled, primed for battle. There's their utility player, Tepelo Morena, expecting Esperance to push for an early goal.
I think the first few minutes they're gonna come gun blazing because also they're playing home, and yeah they're gonna go mostly on the sides as how they played in I think they're gonna take the style of play they played in the AFCON. And yeah, I think the most important thing, we just need to try and close the sides and force them inside where we have numbers.
You can catch the action live on SABC 1 at 9 p.m. Cricket, Gerald Coetzee from South Africa helping bowl the Mumbai Indians to a thrilling 9-run win over the Punjab Kings in their Indian Premier League showdown last night. And finally, athletics, Olympic champion Perez Jepchirchir is setting pulse racing ahead of the London Marathon, predicting a record-breaking run that could eclipse Mary Keitany's iconic record, with a lineup boasting some of the fastest women ever. Jepchirchir eyes a historic win but knows it won't be easy.
I was excited last year to be in third place, even though again I was coming from injury, but I was so happy for my results. And on Sunday I know the team is strong, and I know it's not easy. A lot of tension is here and there. We are running with strong ladies. I know it's not easy, but in God I know we are going to make.
More sport on SFM comes to you again around 12:30. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed for that. All right, your story of the week, your response to John Steenhuisen. What did you think? 086 000 2032, just after 8:30.
Thank you, Stephen. In your headlines, 27 post office branches in Limpopo have closed down. Provincial Secretary of the Communication Workers Union, Amos Chabalala, says the Polokwane and Westernburg branches are the only ones operating. The Basic Education Department has sought to clarify reports that there are 30,000 vacant teachers positions countrywide. Department spokesperson Elijah Mhlanga says these are acting posts that are yet to be occupied permanently. And voting gets underway in India today, the world's largest democracy, and where almost 1 billion people are eligible to cast their vote. The governing Hindu nationalist BJP, led by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, has been in power since 2014 and is seeking a third term. I'll have details on these and other stories at 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still very heavy on Pretoria to Joburg, the run this morning on the M1 South. There's this big crash scene that happened earlier at John Foster Drive. Authorities still dealing with it. Multiple lanes are closed and traffic's all the way back through to Rigel Avenue. It's a super heavy queue. Looks like a lot of motorists are ducking off out of it at the R21 and trying to cut back through Irene, so Nel Napier's Drive, quite heavy, passing the college in towards the main road junction. The rest of Gauteng is eased up quite nicely. Durban, another crash on the N2 North before Spaghetti Junction, so that traffic running up the N2 into the roadworks remains heavily backed up from the M7. You pass the crash and then you hit the roadworks. Lost load on the N3 near Pavilion Mall. The left lane is obstructed. It's a Jojo tank that's come off a vehicle this morning just by Pavilion Mall by the Westfield exit. And Cape Town, a bit of traffic pressure on Robert Sobukwe this morning, just moving slowly towards 35th Avenue and Stellenbosch Arterial Junction. That's if you're on your way from the airport up towards Belleville. The M3 is eased up from Constantia. You really just pick up the queues from sort of Rhodes Drive through to UCT and onwards to Hospital Bend. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Stephen Grootes on SAFM.
26 minutes now to 9 the time. Good morning. Time for your story of the week, 086 000 2032. You heard that conversation with John Steenhuisen. We're trying to sort of hear from as many political leaders as we can ahead of the elections. We'll do it just after 8 o'clock on a Friday and have a sort of sober conversation, if you like, put questions to them and hear from them. Your views on that. Also, of course, the issue of unrecored SIM cards. That's been a big issue this morning. Durko seems to be very angry with the British government over that terror warning. So all sorts of issues this morning. What, for you, is the biggest story of the week? Let's start in Davyton. Matlakala, hi, good morning. You heard John Steenhuisen.
Yes, good morning, Stephen. I'm really disappointed because you never gave us a chance to ask that man questions. There are many questions regarding John Steenhuisen, but we never got a chance.
All right. Well, look, Matlakala, they're different shows with different formats, which, I think it's much easier. We had a long conversation as a production team about that, and we thought it might be important to have a sort of one-on-one, uninterrupted interview, if you like. But, I understand your disappointment, but that was the decision we made.
Yeah, but that man has a lot to answer to South Africans. His comments, the issue of Israel, because he's now lying that he doesn't support Israel, but the action shows, you see. So he must come so that he can engage.
Well, he says he wants a free and sovereign Palestine. What's your argument with that?
No, but his comments previously, they are silent on Palestinian issues. We need to engage with him so that he can answer to the South African, because he might be a president. Therefore, he needs to answer to us before we elect him.
All right, Matlakala and Davidson, thank you. Ernest in Cape Town, how do you feel about it?
Good morning, Stephen. Stephen, my thing is when it comes to Steenhuisen, he's telling a lot of lies, talking about how this government is only in the white areas. Okay, he talks about Kalicha. There's Menenberg, there's Belhar. Every day, people are changing Belhar. I don't know if you're aware, I don't know if you know where Belhar is. Okay? Every day, when I talk about every day, he talks about lead officers. They're driving around here with a van with a big sign on it. Lead officers coming to your area 3 months ago already. Until thus far, not one lead officer. Lead officers is only in white areas. He talks about how much jobs they created. For who? When colored people fought for jobs, they took the colored people to the courts. Remember that. You never asked him about that. Well, who was the jobs for? Which is a lie. The man, I used to belong to them. Okay? They racist. When I stood up in a meeting with them, they almost like chased me out of the office in Mamasbury. I belong in. We got roads that is gravel. Every time when money is given, they use it in the white areas. And you can ask him about that in the Swartland area. Okay?
Well, I did put the question particularly around Khayelitsha, Ernest, because that's what I hear most often from people, is that Khayelitsha doesn't get the service delivery of other areas.
Khayelitsha is about one area.
Sure.
About one.
Well, I was using it as an example, Ernest, but anyway.
Okay, do you know Biala?
No, well, Ernest, I didn't grow up in the Western Cape, so I don't know it very well.
No, but you shouldn't, because you only heard about Khayelitsha. You shouldn't ask questions which you have heard about. There's Khayelitsha, there's Menenberg,
sure.
There is Hanover Park, there is so many other areas that is being neglected by the DA. And soon, the only party that is really standing up for colored people is the NCC. No, I haven't voted for the NCC as yet.
Okay. What's the full name of that party, Ernest?
The Colored Congress.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Colored Congress.
Yes.
Fabio.
All right.
Is the guy's name.
Okay.
Now, I wish you would interview him and ask him about it. the policy, the equity policy was introduced, and only 5% of colored people could have jobs. None of them stood up. Not one party stood up and said we're against it. Not one party standing up against this Della. None of them.
All right, Ernest in Cape Town, we've heard from you. Thank you. Strong views there. And Klantla in KwaZulu-Natal, do you have strong views as well?
Yes, indeed. Good morning, my brother Stephen, and thanks for taking my call, and good morning to your listeners.
Morning. Go for it.
On the issue of the DA, I was going to ask two questions. The issue of equality, of inequality, as if the World Bank has stated 2 times.
Yeah.
About the issue of inequality in this country. And then challenging affirmative action, the vehicle of employment equity to ensure that equality closer, equality being enforced to ensure that unfair discrimination is being dealt away with it. And then the crowns of the DA to come and challenge the affirmative action with the FF Plus. It shows how deep they still left in the history of apartheid.
Okay, so you support affirmative action in I mean, that's fine. I'm just asking, you support affirmative action. That's what you want.
I support it 150% because it is the vehicle of ensuring that Section 9 of the Constitution, equality, is being attained.
Okay. All right. No, in Klantla, thank you. On the line from KwaZulu-Natal, that is the law of the land at the moment. The DA, as you know, does oppose it. 086 000 2032, your story of the week. But, of course, obviously, that conversation with John Steenhuisen, the leader of the DA. Bruce in Randburg. Hello, Bruce.
Yeah, morning, Stephen. Stephen, I just want to make a simple observation and ask you a question. Not that you're saying this, but this is the general sentiment that people say. If the argument is don't vote for the DA because the DA has failed to deliver, there's an inconsistency. If you look at the Western Cape, you compare suburbs to townships, the service delivery is not the same. That's a reason not to vote for the DA. Well, then that same argument should be used to the ANC, because if you go to any city in South Africa or any province in South Africa, and I've lived in KwaZulu-Natal, Joburg, and I'm now living in the Western Cape, it's the exact same reality. You find functional and generally working services in the suburbs, and then in the townships you find subpar or less functional services in the townships. So if that argument is, I'm just saying, if it's don't vote for the DA for that reason, well then nobody should vote for the ANC either.
I suppose it also depends on what you say you're doing. So I suppose the argument, if I were to try and think of an argument against you, Bruce, would go like this. The DA says, vote for us because we deliver better services. So then the response to that is, but you don't in some areas. Would you make anything of that argument? Whereas the ANC makes different arguments, is my point.
Yeah, maybe. But that's generally not what people say. The general criticism is you don't vote for the DA if they use that argument because it failed to deliver services in townships. The point I'm making is that is the same reality in every other province.
All right, Bruce in Randburg. Interesting point. Thank you. I hadn't thought of that, I must say. Saviwe in Lepalale. Hi, Saviwe.
Hi, Stephen. How are you?
Yeah, I'm well. Go for it.
I'm good. Stephen, there's a bit of an issue here. We've got to bear one thing in mind. When we talk about the Western Cape and the DA, we're talking about a province that is suffering from the failures of the Eastern Cape government, of the ANC-led government in the Eastern Cape. Because most of the people that are moving from the Western Cape are moving from the Eastern Cape because of the failures of the ANC government down in the Western Cape, in the Eastern Cape. And secondly, Stephen, we need to talk about effective expenditure of the budget that is being allocated to that certain province or that certain council. In the Western Cape, if you allocate 100 rands, 95 rands of the 100 rands can be accounted for. And if you allocate the same 100 rands in an ANC-run administration, you can only account for 30 rands for that. So if the DA is actually suffering from a problem whereby let's accept it. It is being underfunded in the Western Cape. Because for that 100 rands, they can account what they did with that 100 rands. It's just not, the 100 rands is just not enough to cater for the problem that exists in that province.
Sure.
So let's start comparing apples to apples.
Yeah, okay. Look, I mean, Severe, it's a strong point, sure, about, the Eastern Cape. I mean, are you a supporter or a member of the DA?
I'm a member.
Sorry?
I'm just stating, I'm not a member of
Okay.
the DA. I used to vote.
All right, we seem to be losing you there, Severe, but as I heard it, you're not a member of the DA. But interesting point, thank you. Severe from Lepalala saying that the DA in the Western Cape is dealing with the problems created by the ANC in the Eastern Cape. Sure. Siyabonga in KwaZulu-Natal, do you see it like that?
Well, Stephen, had quite an interesting morning.
Yes. And I kind of knew it would be, I won't lie.
Now, Stephen, I just wish that one day we'd forget about that Stephen is a white man and Siyabonga is a black man. And then we deal with the facts. I live in Durban, Stephen, but I come from the north part of KZN. When I'm at home, I do my shopping in Mpangeni and Richards Bay. And what I turn around, Stephen, that municipality was under ANC not so long ago. And then it's now under the coalition of the IFP and the DA.
Yeah.
Stephen, you can look for paper in the CBD. It's so clean. To the point that the improvement of service deliveries have made one of the parties in the MPC, which is the MPC, which is the IFP, to take wards that way, obviously known as ANC wards. I think that speaks to what the parties in that MEC do where they govern. And when we deal with the facts, even you forget about John is a white man. It's very difficult to argue against most of what he has said, because even those the rating agencies will tell you that this is what they do.
Yeah.
And when me and you disagree on something, and then there's someone who does research and say these are my research findings, the best thing we can do if we still want to argue that person is do you conduct your own research and come back and say, here, you're talking nonsense, these are my findings. In the absence of that, Stephen, well, one has to stop disagreeing with me, because there's none that he can produce.
Yes.
I think, Stephen, if we're honest about, and then, but we get accused of being clever blacks because we don't have to act on facts.
Yes.
Facts, Stephen, one day I was listening to Christopher saying, for the poor household in Umgeni is a very small and rural municipality. He said they give about 200 kilowatts of electricity per month. But contrast that with the Teveni, which is a very rich metro. It gives about 50 kilowatts a month for four households. Then between the two, who gives better services?
Yeah.
You don't need the rocket scientists to determine it. But I'm saying, Stephen, for the parties in the MPC, they've got a good story to tell. They've got a track record, some of them. And when you compare and contrast with what the IFP and the ANC and the SF will give, or let's talk about the MK, because they've not governed. For a clever black, if I use that term, it's very easy to make a decision.
Well, yeah, Siyabonga, you bring up many interesting points. I mean, politics is often about feelings and facts, and that's what makes it so interesting.
Yeah, Stephen. And I think for the development and the betterment of our country, we have to judge these politicians based on facts. Not on maybe the feeling does not help us much until this far.
Yeah.
But let's deal with the facts, Stephen, and then because if we deal with the facts, our country is going to benefit. But if we still stuck on feelings, anyway, if you make decisions based on feelings, you're bound to get it wrong. But thanks for the time, Stephen.
Siyabonga, thank you. Really appreciate it. On the line from KZN. Francis in Cape Town. Francis, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen, and SFM listeners. I'm just trying to contribute on the interview that you just had with John Steenhuisen. Excuse my pronunciation if I'm correct on his timing. However, I am a Zambian, a foreigner who lives in South Africa, and I've lived in South Africa for over 21 years. And part of it, I've lived in Johannesburg for over 15 years, and since then I moved to Cape Town. I have seen massive change and development compared to how Joburg has been running backwards or downwards. Because what you can't manage, you can't keep.
Yeah.
And usually, the people that think DA is not developing in certain areas, or it has been so slow in development, I see it in the sense that if you've never traveled outside Western Cape, you were born in Western Cape, grew up in Western Cape, and lived their entire life, you will never see the comparison on how they've managed to run this province. I don't want to be like I'm being biased with the ANC or being biased with whoever, but it's just my own observation. I've seen there's so much development this side.
Sure.
Thank you.
All right, Francis in Cape Town, that's a very interesting view from someone who's been here for a long time, but a very interesting view. All right. Takatayo on the line from Cape Town. Would you agree with that, Takatayo?
Thank you very much, Stephen. I agree. I am from Kosumbaba in Eastern Cape, the former Transkei.
Yeah.
I came in Cape Town in 1981. We know that time it was that time of apartheid era.
Yeah.
But now I'm currently in Cape Town. I am telling you, Stephen, you see the people who used when people are talking about the development in the Western Cape, they used to ask you, how about the Kailis, how about the Philippe, how about Nyanda? Let me just tell you one thing, I'm the security officer, Stephen.
Mm-hmm.
Before the city of Cape Town go and do services in those places like Kailis, Nyanda and Philippe, they needed to organize law enforcement members to go and escort them to do services that are helping us, we communities. Because if they can go alone then, they are going to be marked, they are going to be robbed out of their valuable. That is the reason why you find that people who are staying in those areas of Kailisha, they are like, no, they are like, they are sidelined, you know? It's not that they are sidelined, but it's because the situation there is not favorable for the city of Cape Town staff to go and help them there. To tell you the last point, you know, like I said, I'm from Kosumbaba in Eastern Cape. DA in the Western Cape, I'm not a member of DA, but I'm telling you, Stephen, I am happy with their development in the Western Cape. Where I stay here in my street, the drain was just overflowing. It was Monday, but yesterday the truck was here to make sure the drain is running smooth.
Okay.
But in those areas, Stephen, where they can go safe, they can go there. Yes.
All right, Takatayo, thank you. I must say, I thought that we'd have an interesting conversation, and as always, it goes into all sorts of directions, this. Your story of the week, your reaction to that conversation with the DA leader, John Steenhuisen. 086 000 2032, it's 9 minutes to 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still very heavy coming out of Pretoria. There's a new incident now as well. There's a collision scene. In fact, that's just off the highway, but on the highway, it's a breakdown on the M1 South at Linwood Road. So delays coming down from the N4, Emelafeni Highway into that. And then it gets really heavy just after Rigel Avenue, sitting traffic all the way through to a big crash scene, blocking multiple lanes at John Foster Drive. Make sure you've got plenty of time to get through that. Irene's fairly busy. Looks like motorists are coming out of that N1 queue down the R21 and then sort of backtracking on Nel Mapius into the main road junction, so big queues through there. And just talking of that area, don't forget this weekend, a major shutdown of the R21. It'll be fully closed on Saturday and Sunday, both directions between Nel Mapius Drive and Olifantsfontein Road, 6 a.m., 6 p.m. on Saturday, and then back on Sunday, 6 a.m. until 12 noon. It's going to be massively disruptive. There'll be queues of traffic on the R21 at the Nel Mapius closure and at the Olifantsfontein closure, M57, M18, Irene, Clayville areas. Your alternative routes will be jam-packed at times as well. Roadworks on the R21, leaving the airport, queuing traffic up towards the Benoni exit. The lane closures there start back at Pomona Road. Into Durban we go with now a breakdown on the N2 North at Spaghetti Junction, so the traffic remains heavy from the M7. And Cape Town conditions easing on the highways, the M5 probably the busiest as you're sitting traffic waiting to turn onto the N2 inbound towards Hospital Bend. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
USM Alger and RSB Pekane will demonstrate what a North African derby looks like. Who are the real heroes of the North between the Algerians and the Moroccans? This is the first leg of the Total Energies CAF Confederation Cup semi-final. USM Alger versus RSB Pekane. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. This Sunday, 21 April at 9 p.m. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Stephen Grootes on SAFM.
7 minutes to 9 the time. 086 000 2032. Your story of the week, but really, of course, I suppose, and this is what I think will happen with our series of conversations with political leaders, your reaction to that conversation with John Steenhuisen. Luba, you're in Gugulethu this morning. Hi. What do you think?
Hi, Stephen. Thanks a lot, Trent, for taking my call. Listen, I'm here in Cape Town right now in Brooks, and I'm going to say one thing. I've been staying in Grootes for all my life, and I've seen the changes that the DA has done. But the problem with the DA in Cape Town specifically is that they're catering for most people who are coming from the Eastern Cape. If you look at all the informal settlements that have been mushrooming around Cape Town, those guys are coming from the Eastern Cape, Stephen. They come there every day, but they vote for the ANC in the Eastern Cape, and then they run to the Western Cape, and then all the problems that we have here, the violence in Kukulet, I've never seen such violence in my life, Stephen. You know, and these people, they do these violent acts, and then they go back to the Eastern Cape. You know, it's like they're untraceable, you know, and they come back, they do this all the time. And that's the problem that we have here. You know, I'm not saying that people can't move. I've been to Joburg, I've been to Hammanskraal, but the problem is this. The people who vote for the ANC in the Eastern Cape, everyone is here. And I'm not saying there shouldn't be, but I'm saying that we need to be fair. The issue with informal settlement in Cape Town has never been this bad in my entire life. You know, we send boys to initiation school. We call it the mountain. We send these boys to the mountain. It's so sad because now we have to protect that space that we have to send those boys to the mountain because of the guys coming from the Eastern Cape. They see an open space, whether it's a cricket field or a soccer field, they're going to build shacks there. And then guess what? They can't be removed.
Sure.
I mean, it's not fair.
Yeah.
You know?
Look, Luba, I mean, people are desperate, eh? People in the Eastern Cape are absolutely desperate. I mean, in many places, they're absolutely desperate. And isn't that what happens?
Yes, I understand. But the governors in the Eastern Cape, they have to take responsibility for the people that they're voting for. You know, if the people are voting for you in the Eastern Cape, to cater for those people.
Yeah.
Now, those people are here in the Western Cape, and they're causing, you know, those informal settlements that are here. It's every day. There's COVID, there's Ramaphosa villages. You know, they name all these informal settlements. And the problem is this, right? The DA can never, ever fix this if Eastern Cape is not fixed. The Western Cape will always be an issue if the Eastern Cape is not fixed. We have to fix the Eastern Cape so we can fix the Western Cape.
All right, Luba and Guguletu, thank you. I appreciate that, especially from someone who lives there and obviously, you know, a lived experience kind of call, if you like. France and Centurion. France, where you live, where you work, are you part of Trane?
Yes, I'm part of Trane, but then I'm interested in the stories in the Western Cape because, I mean, I think majority of us, we don't take ourselves very serious. I mean, the ANC is running all these other provinces and majority of municipalities. And whatever the people expect DA to do in Culture and Gule to, is it happening in Soweto, Alexander, and other areas? Nothing. So, and then, I mean, we're being unfair because we don't take ourselves seriously. I mean, the ANC is not doing anything. The ANC, what is doing, what is best in doing, is those social services that giving away of grants and everything. No services, no water, nothing. Where ANC is doing nothing. They're only good in dishing out grants. That's all. There's a majority of the people that are voting for ANC. They're doing it for the grants.
Sure. All right, France. All right, France and Centurion, thank you. A strong view there. Vincent and Brakpan, also about the Western Cape and the DA. Vincent, hi.
Good morning, Stephen. How are you?
Yeah, I'm well, Vincent. Go for it.
Yes, Stephen, I just want to find out from the people that call and make baseless claims or unconfirmed claims that people that leave the Eastern Cape vote for the ANC, then run to the Western Cape. How do they know that those people vote for the ANC? Do they interview them or what? Maybe those people don't even vote. You know, maybe they vote for the DA in the Eastern Cape because people can vote anywhere.
Yeah.
So people cannot come to radio and say those people.
No, sure.
Vote
Fair
for
point,
for the ANC. They don't even interview these people to ask them, who did you vote for? So I think it's something that we should look into going forward.
It's also if people are living in the east, if people are from the Eastern Cape and living in the Western Cape, have they registered to vote in the Western Cape, and do they actually vote? I mean, the most likely thing is they don't vote.
Yes, fair enough. That's my point, you know, because I could be living in Limpopo and vote for another party that is dominant in the Eastern Cape. How do people know, who I vote for?
Yeah. All right, Vincent and Brackman, thank you. Yeah, look, strong point, but it's always, difficult for me to question people's lived experience. So, I'll always treat them with care, but you are correct. If people make claims, they must back them up. Wonga in Matatiel. Hello, Wonga. Yeah, Wonga, there's terrible noise behind you. Go for it.
Okay, no. I've just you. Stephen, I'm also in the taxi industry.
Yeah.
What I can tell you, when I grew up, let me tell you about Matadira as we speak. On Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, there are trains whereby we transport people to Cape Town. You know what is happening?
What?
Yes, we may have not interviewed these people for who they vote for. But the majority of these people, they leave the Eastern Cape to Cape Town, and where they know that they will get an RDP, they will sell it within a short period of time.
Sure.
Then it's congested. The reality of the matter, people can blame. If you look at the tender processes about Hammanskraal, how water was supposed to be done, who is running water, is national government, not the local government. You also come to other areas like where we are. Where I am in the Eastern Cape, the Alfred Nzot District Municipality is getting 1.2 billion. The irregular expenditure, as I speak to you now, is 1.1 billion under the ANC. People will never complain about that. People will never say anything about that. But the reality of the matter is that we always wanted to put color in each and everything. Personally, as Wonga, I've interacted too many times with John. He is a fair person. He quite understands the hardship of a black person. Maybe I will even say the hardship of a black person more than the hardship of his own color. So we must stop putting color on each and everything. People must wake up. Come 30 May, you will see load shedding. And the same people that will be suffering are the same people who trust ANC and vote ANC. Because the ANC, what is just mastering at the present moment, is to always put race in each and everything. Thank you, Stephen.
All right, Wonga and Matatiel, thank you. Well, Wonga, I'm afraid you're our last call today. Thank you very much for being with us. Thank you for your calls this morning. As always, it's just so interesting. I never kind of know where our conversations are going to go. It's one of the great joys of doing this job. To Mdus, Stanza, Melissa and Paul, we will be back with you on Monday. Luyanda, my friend, we're going to miss you. You with SFM leading the conversation. It's 9 o'clock.
Thank you, Stephen. I'm very humbled with that. In your top stories, 27 post office branches in Limpopo closed down, and the DBE moves to clarify 30,000 teaching vacancies. This is SAFM News. A very good morning. I am Luyanda Maume. 27 post office branches in Limpopo have been closed. Provincial Secretary of the Communication Workers Union, Amos Chabalala, says the Polokwane and Westernburg branches are the only ones operating. The state-owned entity has been experiencing financial challenges in the last few years, and the Gauteng High Court in Pretoria ordered it to be placed under business rescue last year. The entity provides the public with banking, car license renewal and mail services, amongst others. Some residents residing in the rural areas say they are now struggling to get information since the closures.
As elderly people, we can't do emails, but with the post office, we were able to get letters. Now that they have shut down, it's very painful. We want the government to help us.
We were able to get letters from far away when the post office was operating, but now we can't get anything because they are closing down, which means we can't get letters anymore.
The Basic Education Department has sought to clarify reports that there are 30,000 vacant teachers' positions countrywide. Department spokesperson Elijah Mhlanga says these are acting posts that are yet to be occupied permanently. These vacancies were revealed by Basic Education Minister Enji Motshekga in a written parliamentary reply. The top three provinces with massive vacant positions are KwaZulu-Natal, Eastern Cape and Limpopo. The minister says filling of vacant posts at schools is an ongoing process to ensure that there's no class without a teacher for all the grades. Mhlanga elaborates.
In education, whenever someone departs, someone will act in that position, and then the position will be advertised, and that's a process that happens on any given time. So when the question came at the time when it was asked to the minister, she answered it in that way because at that time that was the number of posts that were still being processed to get the people acting in those positions to be permanently employed.
To this story now, 8 Nigerian nationals have been arrested and charged with public violence and malicious damage to property after they broke windows of Kimberley Police Station and damaged police vehicles. Suspects were retaliating after police arrested a Nigerian national for allegedly being in possession of drugs. During the clashes, police fired rubber bullets. Provincial SAPS spokesperson Cheryl Elas elaborates.
During the execution of the arrest, the man allegedly resisted and assaulted the SAPS member with a tire strap. A large group, all believed to be Nigerian nationals, attacked the members and damaged SAPS vehicles. Police fired rubber bullets to disperse the crowd. 3 suspects were arrested for public violence and detained at Kimberley Police Station. During the processing, the suspects broke windows at the station. The group approached the police station and threatened to retaliate. The operational commander warned the group to disperse. Upon dispersing, the group damaged police vehicles.
In your election-related news now, independent candidate Anele Mda says she will hold those in power accountable if elected to Parliament. The former COPE MP briefed the media at Constitution Hill yesterday. Mda says Parliament must develop a grassroots accountability mechanism where premiers, ministers and members of Parliament are scrutinized and held accountable.
At the core and at the pertinent center of my manifesto is the recall of the ethical and accountable leadership, which is not a favor that South Africans deserve, but a mandatory of every single person who serves in public office in our country. Because you must remember, we are not being done favors. We are not being served because people are beautiful. We are being served because people have taken the time to come to public office, and in public office you occupy space to lead. And we cannot be led by suspicious, dubious characters. We must demand integrity.
And finally, voting gets underway today in India, the world's largest democracy, and where almost 1 billion people are eligible to cast their votes. The governing Hindu nationalist BJP, led by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, has been in power since 2014 and is seeking a third term. The BJP commands a strong majority in parliament, with its biggest opposition rival, the Congress Party, trailing behind in opinion polls. The BBC's Arunodei Mukherjee reports.
There are 39 lawmakers that are sent from this state into the parliament, and all of those 39 seats will be voting through the day today. Tamil Nadu as a state as well, from an economic point of view, has always been very important. It has found itself in the middle of all sorts of economic discussions and policy decisions as well, making it the state which is the second largest economy of the country, contributing nearly 9% to the country's GDP. So that gives you a context of why Tamil Nadu is important to the political establishment in terms of policy making as well.
Recapping your top story, 27 post office branches in Limpopo have been closed down, leaving users stranded. For SAFM News, I am Luyanda Maume. Headlines at 9:30.
#SAFM Talking Point.
Makoti Down Products is a proudly South African family business, started more than 30 years ago with 12 geese and a piece of material. Makoti manufactures duvets, pillows, sleeping bags and high-quality Egyptian cotton linen. Our down products are suitable for people with dust mite allergies and come with a lifelong guarantee. And we offer a nationwide cleaning service for all your feather and down products. Visit us at makoti.co.za or call us